All right, guys, welcome back to the stream. Welcome if you are new. Thank you guys so much for being here with me. Thank you for waiting patiently in the chat, as always, for the show to actually begin. Always appreciate that. We have some more topics to discuss today. We're talking once again about PlayStation, but we are also talking, we're going to talk about some Xbox stuff as well, because we have like a kind of weird situation that has occurred, a potentially unexpected situation where Sony has seemingly come out and defended Xbox, more specifically Starfield. And I was quite surprised to see this, although maybe it's not the most shocking thing, but I still think it's interesting. And not only that, we are going to be talking about something that has absolutely flown under the radar. A lot of this stuff is kind of flying under the radar because there's a lot of other stuff happening as well. And that is the fact that it has been revealed that Sony demands, basically demands and fully expects their bigger AAA studios to produce not just good games, not just even great games, but superb games, basically. They expect review scores from their games in the 90s or above. And this has created a little bit of discourse. And I wanted to talk about this, let you know how we're learning this information, and also let you know what I think of it. And I'm also going to be interested to see what you guys have to say. And right off the bat here today, we have Zombie Dragon getting things started. Let's get some W's in the chat for Zombie Dragon. Shout out to you, man. Give you a crazy Arnold laugh for that one. I appreciate that, bud. And so, yeah, that'll be a great way for me to segue into letting you guys know how you can support my channel and my content. Obviously, as you can see, Zombie Dragon has gifted a membership. This is something we are still doing here on the channel. We will continue to do it. We have a very generous and also a very gracious community here. I think we have one of the best communities on YouTube, frankly. So if you're already a channel member, please consider gifting memberships. It helps tremendously. It really gets the community involved, gets the community excited, and it's a great way for you to support what I do directly. If you want to become a channel member, consider doing that as well, but also donating super chats. That is incredibly helpful. You guys have also shown incredible support with super chats. Not only does it keep the conversation interesting and it keeps it going in different directions, but again, it's another way for you guys to directly support what I do here. As I always say, I am fan funded. I do rely on this audience and this community to be able to do what I do here. So thank you guys for all of your continued support, and it goes a very long way. So with that being said, I want to first off, I see quite a few people in the chat asking me if I've finished the Final Fantasy 16 demo yet. The reason why people are asking this is because yesterday I talked about playing the Final Fantasy 16 demo on PlayStation 5, and I revealed that I didn't quite finish it. I actually didn't realize just how close to the end of the demo I was. I probably should have just tried to sit there and finish it, but I did finish the Final Fantasy 16 demo, and wow. So where to begin? First off, it was painful to have it just end, right? Like, to just see where it ended. I'm not going to spoil anything for anybody, okay? So this is not going to be anything I discuss. There's going to be no spoilers, but man, yeah, that is a perfect demo, is basically the way I can put it. It's a perfect demo. This demo encapsulates everything that it needs to sell somebody on Final Fantasy 16. This demo is the perfect example of a development team that is completely confident in their product, completely confident in their game. This is a demo that shows you not just it doesn't just give you a small taste of what this game is. It basically serves you almost every aspect of what this game is going to entail, and it also leaves you with this, it's not a feeling because you just know. They leave you with this sense of, wow, this is just the tip of the iceberg with this game. And yeah, people were telling me like, dude, the ending of the demo is the best part. And one thing I have to tell you that I was not expecting playing this Final Fantasy 16 demo, and honestly, I don't know if I was even expecting this with Final Fantasy 16 in general. As somebody who's paid minimal attention to the story trailers, you know, like I kind of understand what they're setting up with Clive, and there's gonna be a lot of heavy drama and you know, warring nations and stuff like that. Like I get that. And I was kind of afraid going into Final Fantasy 16 that like the biggest hurdle probably isn't going to be the gameplay, probably isn't going to be the combat, probably isn't going to be the RPG aspects, because these are all things that not only do I fully expect to be good, but I fully anticipate that I'm going to thoroughly enjoy them. I was actually concerned about the story, about the characters, about like, are they going to be able to really kind of, you know, grab me and get me to care about what's going on here. And right off the bat, they just kind of throw you into it. They throw you into it, and I won't lie, you don't really know what's going on. And I didn't know what was going on. I was just kind of struck by the scale immediately off the bat with the Final Fantasy demo. Even though it is very, I've seen people complaining that like this demo and seemingly the game is going to be very cutscene heavy. I actually love this. I know that there are people who don't enjoy like so many cutscenes or some of them being too long. I absolutely love it. I think it's perfectly balanced. That's just me. Again, I'm a person who's always loved the Metal Gear Solid games, and we know how that game is with cutscenes. I love it. I love it. I think it has just the right balance of having, you know, cutscenes and story and breaks, and also having gameplay. But but yeah, dude, I was just kind of struck at how immediately they just throw you into the game, and they're trying to give you a sense of scale here. And you immediately get it. You're like, okay, yeah, this is a big game. Like there's big things going on literally. And then they introduce you to characters, and there's just this kind of slow building up of like, okay, you know, they're kind of massaging you a little bit, getting you settled in here, getting you familiar with the all the things you need to get familiar. You need to be familiar with, and then as it like builds up to the end of the demo, again without spoiling anything, all I will say is things take a turn, things happen that, and it happens very quickly, and I'm just like, what? And it goes from like 0 to 100 in an instant. And to me, that was the real hook of the demo, because it just revealed to me like that this game is going to be a roller coaster. Like it's not to say that I didn't expect it to have its big moments and to have these bombastic and just kind of crazy scenarios. I think we all kind of got that from the gameplay and the trailers, but it is truly just impressive to me how, like, let me put it to you this way. If the rest of this game is paced and balanced the same way that the first like 2 to 3 hours, I think it's about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, you know, is the beginning of the game. This is going to be a special game. This is going to be an absolutely special game. And knowing that it's like a 30 to 35, like what, 25 to 30, 35 hour experience just for the main story. I'm very impressed. I really am. And it's very surprising to me, because this is my first ever time like playing a mainline Final Fantasy game. And I'm coming off of playing like Final Fantasy VII Remake. And this game is different. Like people were asking me if I think that I'm going to like Final Fantasy 16 more or less than Final Fantasy VII Remake. Because to me, Final Fantasy VII Remake is the high watermark. No doubt about that. And it's all, well, I mean, it has to be the high watermark because it's all I played, but I get, just generally speaking, it's a really top tier game. And going into Final Fantasy 16, I really kind of felt like, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm not as interested, you know, like, because that's just the general feeling I got from most of the story trailers. But based off of what I've played, and again, especially how that demo ended, I feel invested already. Like I already feel like, damn, I'm feeling things. I'm feeling things about the story so far, these characters, and I have a real genuine interest in pursuing. Like I'm on the hook, man. I need to see where this ride goes, where it takes me, and to me that is the telltale sign of a game that has been crafted in such a way where, and I'm just talking about the story, like talking about the gameplay. Um, I did see at least a few people saying that they don't really get it. They weren't really feeling the gameplay. I think the gameplay is good. Like, if I had to rate Final Fantasy 16's gameplay, well, not rate it, but like compare it and kind of place it, when we're just thinking about action oriented gameplay, to me, it's not like at the top, not yet. Like, it's not like the best game I've ever played in terms of gameplay. It could turn into that. I have to see where it goes, because one thing that I also walked away from the demo with Final Fantasy 16 realizing is that this, in terms of gameplay and the depth and the things that you'll be able to do, is just the tip of the iceberg. And so it's too early for me to truly judge, but just based on the general feeling of the gameplay and what they presented, because there are a couple of like mini boss battles in the game, which was really cool. Like, I think in terms of enemies and the way that it was balanced, where it's like, you have your smaller enemies that you're kind of just, it's just there to cannon fodder, basically. And it kind of funnels you into these like medium sized, I guess they're medium sized boss battles. That's what it seems like. And it's just balanced really well in that way. And it does kind of remind me a little bit. I know people are going to disagree with me here. Keep in mind when I say this, I'm not talking about the gameplay, but the way that they're handling the distribution of enemies does remind me a bit of Dark Souls, in the sense that, there's just these linear to semi-open areas with smaller enemies that again, they're just kind of cannon fodder, and you realize you're kind of like trickling your way up to that mini boss battle. And that mini boss battle's worth, it basically tests you, right? Like, if it just creates this interesting dynamic where you just blow right through the regular enemies, and then you get this mini boss battle. It's like, well, you're not going to blow right through this. You're going to have to actually try. And I really like that dynamic at play. It does remind me of Dark Souls in that way. And I'm assuming that's how the game's going to continue to dole out the enemies and the boss battles. So combat and gameplay wise, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I can't say that it's like the best combat I've ever experienced in a game, but it feels top tier. It feels refined. It feels like there was a lot of care and attention put into how does this game feel to play. The way the dodge mechanics work, the way the magic works, the way it kind of blends together, the fact that you have to stagger enemies, and reduce their will. I like that idea. All the systems are just coming into play, and they're working cohesively, and it's doing that exact thing that it's supposed to be doing. That's the thing I want to just point out, is when you play a game like any action game or any action RPG game, the most important thing is these systems have to work together, and they have to blend together in a way that just keeps you feeling like, it's like that 30-second gameplay loop. It just keeps going and going and going and going. And it just continues to feel fresh, even though you're really kind of just hack and slashing a little bit, right? And dodging. So it's a really good blend, I think. I'm enjoying it. Do I think it's better than Final Fantasy VII Remake's combat? I don't know that I'm totally sold on that notion yet. I don't know that I'm totally sold on it, because the thing about Final Fantasy VII Remake's combat, it is, I don't know, man. That is like that's a high bar to clear. But yeah, so all right. I don't know if that would be considered. Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything. Again, I think that's as far as I'm going to go in talking about this. Shout out to the voice acting, by the way. Shout out to the soundtrack. Oh my god, the sound. Yeah, people were mentioning the soundtrack, dude. If there's just a single word to describe Final Fantasy, it's just truly an epic game. It's an epic game, man. It really is. And I guess this isn't a spoiler because the actual game opens up with an icon battle. It's very short, but it really just immediately again kind of shows you like, yeah, this is the scale that we're going for here. So I think Square and the developers who worked on this game, I think they have an absolute winner on their hands. I think this is going to be a huge game, and I think it's going to come out and it's going to blow people away. And I absolutely can see it based off of what I played. It seems to me Final Fantasy 16 is absolutely going to be a Game of the Year contender. So I don't have any doubt about that. MBG, you're not talking about the icon battle, but the icon mode you unlocked. It's a new level. Yeah, I did see that, and I didn't get the chance to play that. I might go check that out. I was kind of surprised by that. I was like, oh, they're giving me even more after just spending like 2.5 to 3 hours with this demo. And I just want to add this final thing here. I think Square Enix and Sony putting out this demo is the smartest thing they could have done because demos are kind of a hit or miss thing, right? Like one thing we can all say with certainty is that anytime a AAA game gets a demo, it's to me it sends the clear message that the development team is confident in what they have. That's that's kind of the feeling I get, and I think with Final Fantasy 16, it's really gonna do a lot of work. I think this demo is doing a lot of work right now for the game, for the team, and for pre-orders as well. Like if Square was worried about pre-orders, like I think this demo is going to sell. I think it already did sell a lot of copies of this game. The fact that your progress carries over is just the icing on top. But I've been seeing so many people saying that they were unsure, they weren't sold on it yet, and they played this demo and they're like, yeah, this is a day one buy for me, or I'm definitely getting it in like the first week. So, saying MBG, Jim Ryan's appearance in the Square Enix live stream is a big indicator of the importance of Final Fantasy to PlayStation. Yeah, dude. To me, it really does seem like Sony and Square going forward are just, I think that partnership's only going to continue to escalate and become stronger. And I know people talk about like Sony acquiring Square Enix. I don't know that would actually be needed. I really don't. Like at the rate that Sony and Square are going, I think that they're both just going to be in a really, really strong, mutually beneficial partnership that there's no need for any type of real ownership, and it just really comes down to like, business is good, man. Like this is working well and let's just keep it going. And as long as it continues to go well, I think that that's what will just continue to happen. So yeah, it's and yeah, I do see people mentioning again, not spoiling anything, the ending of the Final Fantasy 16 demo. All I will say is that it's powerful. I mean, like I'm not going to say anything that happens. All I will say is that I definitely felt emotions. I felt like I think that really shocked me, where I was just like, dude, what? Like I'm sitting here like feeling, my throat getting tighter, just like that, feel like that lump in my throat, watching what's happening right now. And I'm just like, wow, like they're doing it, man. They're actually doing it. Like it was very impressive. I was very, very impressed, truly, and quite surprised. So yeah, man, I got my copy pre-ordered. I got a physical copy. It says it's going to arrive here the day it launches. I did see some people, and it's funny because people were like posting clips on Twitter where it's like the demo ends and they basically say, if you enjoyed it, please consider purchasing the game. And then it takes you right to this screen where you can digitally pre-order the game. And people were just posting their clips of just digitally pre-ordering it. I'm like, yeah, man, we have to reward that stuff. I know, look, we have conversations ad nauseum here on the channel. We will continue to have these conversations about like, um, $70 games. It's a tough sell, AAA games releasing in a broken state. And, more than ever, we have subscriptions and more than ever, people are becoming conditioned to expect games through subscription services. And I'm not saying any of that is wrong. I'm just saying that, when we see things like this come along, like a game like Final Fantasy 16, like I think it's going to do well no matter what, but it's like I always love playing a game, and this is no offense to any video game developers, because I do like to give all video game developers the benefit of the doubt. Like, I believe that all video game developers inherently care about their art, they care about their work, and they want to deliver the best product they can. I inherently believe that. I have a difficult time believing there are any video game developers that actually hate being video game developers and hate making games. But I just get this sense, and this is probably the final thing I'll say, or one of the final things I'll say on Final Fantasy until the game launches. One of the things that clearly is emanating from Final Fantasy 16, like you could just feel it, just comes off of the game, is the passion. Like, just the passion that was poured into this game. Like, you could tell the developers really, really, really care about, like, we're doing every possible thing we can to just sell you on this game and to deliver a great game. And I appreciate that, man. Like, I feel like when you play games, again, I'm not trying to take a shot at any development team, but it's just, you play games and you can just they just give you an impression, you know what I mean? And, they say first impressions are everything. And the first impression I get of Final Fantasy 16, without trying to, gush too much over the game, it really is like, I hear the way the developers talk about the game. I hear how passionate they are about it. And, sometimes it can be confusing where it's like, oh, it's all just marketing and whatnot. But then you play the game and you're like, yeah, that's not marketing. Like, that's real. Like, you can just feel it. You could just feel it coming from the game. So really appreciate that, man. I appreciate that feeling of picking up a game, playing it, and you can just tell, like, yeah, this is worth $70, at least to me. So one final note, not to go on for too long about Final Fantasy, but there is one final note, and this is pretty important because it's something that people will bring up, the performance of the game. So personally, I feel like people have been over-exaggerating about the way the performance mode handles for Final Fantasy 16. Don't get me wrong. It's far from perfect. It's far from perfect. The hope is that this is an older build and that the final build that we're going to play on the 22nd will have fixed this issue. It does have dropped frames. Like, there are moments where it's like, yeah, you can notice like it's struggling to maintain. However, in my experience, like playing the demo from start to finish, at no point, and I'm not exaggerating here, at no point did I think to myself, wow, that's irritating, or that's hindering the overall gameplay experience. It's simply not. It's simply not. Like, that didn't happen. In fact, the only times I really noticed, just a really noticeable, like, boom, it just dropped, is actually in some cutscenes when it seems to be transitioning from like gameplay to a cutscene, in and out of that. For me, that was like the only time I really like seriously visibly noticed, like, oh, I saw that. Other times it's just like, I don't know, man. I guess I'm just too engaged with the game to maybe notice, but I thought it was pretty, I thought it was fine, frankly. If I were to say anything, if I were to sit here and say that, oh man, like, it didn't do this, or I noticed that, and say that it made the experience any less, I would simply be lying. So, but, again, the hope is that when the final build of the game comes out, it has a more just stable performance overall. And a lot of people are saying that that's what's going to happen. Michael Lynch, you're saying, I'm 18 minutes behind. Did you see Vadi Video's Armored Core 6 today? Holy crap, it looks amazing. I actually didn't, unfortunately. That's the nature of sometimes doing these streams and going in with certain topics, is, doing them at the time that I do. I sometimes miss these things, but I will look into that. Yeah, I'm very curious to see Armored Core 6 gameplay. I don't know if I'm sold on Armored Core, frankly, and I'm a big From Software fan. I just don't know, man. Like I know for a fact that if I were to buy Armored Core 6, I can't help it. Like I know my expectation is going to be, so this is going to be Dark Souls with mechs, right? And everything I've read and heard about Armored Core 6 is no. It is not Dark Souls mechs. You know, it is a different game. It is its own game. And I don't, you know, I have to see, man. I'll have to see. Does it have a release date, by the way? Saying MBG, they aren't doing a day one patch for Final Fantasy 16. I know that, but that doesn't mean that when we get the final version, it doesn't mean that we just played the final version of the game. It's coming out in August. We'll see, man. It depends on it really just depends on what I'm playing at the time. You know, if there's nothing else that I'm playing come August, then there's a chance I might be like, oh, From Software, Armored Core, let's give it a shot, you know? Did I play the Lies of P demo? I did, yeah. I actually didn't get to complete that one yet, man. I think I have like 2.5 hours in that demo. I really got stuck on the first boss. It took me a little bit to figure out the mechanics enough to be able to beat him. But dude, Lies of P is really, really good too. Like, there's just so many great games, man. It is crazy. You guys are saying you didn't like Lies of P. Really? I loved it. I absolutely loved Lies of P. I really enjoyed it. Like, honestly, Lies of P, from the moment I started playing, I was like, damn, dude. This feels really good. Jeff B. Gaming, you're saying MBG, the demo is based on 1.01 version, which was the same version given to influencers. The version that will release will be the 1.03. It should be stable. Okay. That's reassuring. See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you know, we're going to be getting a different version of the game in the final game, even though there isn't going to be a day one patch. That's the version of the game we're getting. So the hope is that, yeah, they've sorted out some of those performance hiccups. Let me go see really quick. Yeah, so we're going to dive into... So there's one other initial opening topic. I'm looking at some gameplay right now. I'm just checking out a small gameplay clip of Armored Core really quick. I know it's not on screen, but it's like 30 seconds. Huh. Yeah, it's tough, man. It's a tough sell for me because the gameplay doesn't look bad. It actually looks really good. It's just I don't know, man. I feel a certain way about, I think, the whole mech aesthetic. You know, like it's just like that. The whole mech aesthetic doesn't really. It's not like the most appealing to me, but we'll see. Sorry if that was really loud. Saying rip to headphone user. I apologize. I didn't realize how loud that was going to be. But yeah, it looks pretty solid, man. One other thing I just want to mention, and I'm only going to mention this briefly, but I think it's worth shouting out. Today is actually the 10-year anniversary of The Last of Us. So if you're somebody who was there at the launch of The Last of Us, June 14th, 2013, it's officially been 10 years. So yeah, I mean, just a shout out to The Last of Us, a shout out to Naughty Dog. It's one of the biggest games ever made in terms of just the impact it's had on the industry. And so a lot of people were wondering if Naughty Dog was going to do anything for the 10-year anniversary. I mean, it's still early in the day, and as of right now, neither Sony nor Naughty Dog have announced anything. Unfortunately, but still, you know, there's no denying that The Last of Us marked a pretty significant turning point, I think, for PlayStation, and that turning point was, you know, you could argue like Sony really doubling and tripling down on the, you know, AAA cinematic type experience. So shout out to The Last of Us, one of my favorite games of all time. It's crazy to think it's been out for 10 years. Time flies. All right, but let's dive into the big topic of the day. PlayStation just defended Xbox. What is happening? How did PlayStation defend Xbox? What exactly are they defending? What's going on here? Well, as most of you know, and we did talk about this at length yesterday, but it's still a very contentious topic. Starfield, 30 frames per second. This has created just a big fuss in the industry, and it's created such a fuss that even now a AAA Sony developer has gotten involved. And so this is exactly what happened. Okay. The YouTuber Dreamcast guy put out a tweet. It says here, Santa Monica Studios senior environment artist Danny Carlone responded to a now deleted tweet from YouTuber Dreamcast guy pointing out that a game being locked to 30 frames per second is not a sign that it's unfinished, like some players have been assuming. It is a deliberate choice, especially in games like Starfield, because of their sheer scale. According to Carlone, 60 FPS in a game like Starfield can severely impact visual fidelity and spoil the experience. And so, yes, there was a tweet that was put out by Dreamcast guy. I don't have the actual tweet in front of me. Like, I can't quote him. Again, the tweet was deleted, but it just seems like he basically said that the reason why Starfield isn't going to be 60 FPS on the Xbox consoles is because it's unfinished. And I gotta say, man, like this is truly bizarre to me. It's not like shocking, like gasp, but it is truly bizarre that out of all of the people, like there's a lot of people, a lot of developers, it was a Sony developer. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, who would have thought? It could have been any Microsoft developer. It could have been any third-party developer, but it was a developer, a high-up developer from Sony Santa Monica. Baby Vamp, you're saying MBG, some ignorant people want Sony to fire him for being honest, LOL. People aren't developers and they think they know how everything works. Well, that's extreme. All right. That is insanely extreme. Like we're gonna fire this man for chiming in here. However, it naturally is going to create a conversation where it's like, okay, so we now have confirmation from a developer, not just any developer, a Sony developer, that Starfield is justifiably 30 frames per second. And this is where you can clearly see, I said yesterday that no one can argue, or I don't know if I said this exactly, like I'm not quoting myself, but I basically insinuated that no one can argue. There's just nothing you can say about Starfield being 30 frames per second. And I basically said that people have decided they are okay with this. You might see some tweets, maybe some comments, and people saying that it's unacceptable. And keep in mind, it's not me saying it is or is not acceptable. I'm just simply saying that generally speaking, the general consensus, the popular opinion is that it's fine. The unpopular opinion at this point is that it's not okay. And nothing exemplifies this more than the fact that a Sony developer has come out to defend it. So that to me is kind of the catch-22 here, right? Where it's like, before this, we could have maybe had the conversation that, well, I guess what I mean to say is the people who have the unpopular opinion right now of, I don't think it's okay that Starfield's 30 FPS, Microsoft marketed their consoles the most powerful, so on and so forth. this is kind of nonsense. And now suddenly everybody's okay with it. There was like some wiggle room for that. You know what I mean? Like there was like some wiggle room where it's like, yeah, that, even though it's an unpopular opinion and most people seem to disagree, there's enough room where it's like, it's a valid, I mean, I guess you could say it's a valid opinion no matter what, but more people would be open to kind of being like, okay, maybe I could see that side of it. But now, I don't know, man. I feel like this Sony developer effectively they just did more for Microsoft than Microsoft could have done for themselves. And again, like what that person said, like, oh, people are saying this developer should get fired. Hell no, he shouldn't get fired. Like, that's absurd. Like, the dude is just a developer and he's just giving insight into something. But I will say this, that dude, if I was Sony's marketing team, I'd be like, bro, like you're making this too easy for them. You know what I mean? Like you're just handing them wins here. Like that's their job. You know what I'm saying? It is Microsoft and Bethesda and their marketing team's job to convince people and sell people on the idea that 30 FPS is okay. And so what this has led me to think, and this is where I really am interested in this, it kind of gets you wondering, like, is this Sony developer basically just trying to warn everybody? You know what I mean? Because right now, there are at least a certain amount of PlayStation fans that are convinced that they're never going to be in this situation. That they're never going to be in this situation. And what I mean by that is, well, dude, look, you can believe one of two things. You can believe this developer and you can believe Bethesda when they say this was a design choice. This game can't run at 60 on this console because it would just, the fidelity would drop too low. Okay? Or you can believe other people who are saying that that's nonsense. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's basically something behind it where it's like, no, this game can run at 60 FPS. You guys just aren't willing to do it, or you're not willing to take the extra time or whatever. And it just, you have no choice but to assume that those who choose to believe that it is nonsense and it is unacceptable that Starfield runs at 30 FPS, may God have mercy on their soul. No, just kidding. It's a bit dramatic, but in all seriousness, like they are going to run into potentially a big problem come maybe 2024, 2025, 2026, when I don't know that this is going to happen, but I'm not going to sit here and assume it never will. The day may come where Sony reveals a big, exciting game, and then the news comes out that this is a 30 frames per second game on PS5. There is no 60 FPS. And this is why I'm not here to defend Xbox. I'm not here to defend Starfield. I don't care. Like, I get that people want 60 FPS from Starfield. Why the hell wouldn't they on their console? But what I am here to say is that this is where people need to just calm down and realize that you can get as mad as you want and you can be as biased as you want and you could just go in, man, on Bethesda, on Starfield, on Microsoft, but you need to be at least consciously aware of the fact that you might find yourself in that exact same position in the not too distant future with a game that suddenly you're going to feel like you have to defend. And I think that that's just important for people to highlight right now. And we got Hellbound 1981. Hell yeah, dude. Hellbound coming in, doing some more heavy lifting for this community, gifting 5 memberships. Guys, you're already ahead of me. Getting some W's in the chat for Hellbound. Thank you so much for that, man. Really appreciate that, dude. Hellbound has continued to do work here for this community. Very generous, Hellbound. I really appreciate that, dude. Thank you for always coming in strong. Shout out to you. They love you, Hellbound. They love you. It's just so funny, dude. Like, because sometimes I actually start to see the W's in the chat before I actually even see the notification that the gifts were dropped, and it's pretty funny because of the screen I'm looking at can sometimes be a little bit delayed. Love to see it, man. So thank you for that. Planet Schlorpian, you're saying now that EA can't exclusively make Star Wars games anymore, we need Chewie Wookiee cookie cooking for PSVR 2. Planet Schlorpian, I don't know where that comes from. I don't know where that comes from, but yeah, man, sure, why not? Come on, Sony, get on it. Make Planet Schlorpian happy. I appreciate it, dude. Thank you for the super chat. Axis Hawk, member for 12 months. You're saying 1 year since I became a member. Keep going, man. Well, congratulations, dude. I really appreciate that long-term support. And it's just a good opportunity for me to shout out and let everybody know. If you have been gifted a membership, please, once your membership expires, please consider renewing it and supporting me month over month. It really does go a long way. And so to all my longtime supporters, a huge shout out to you guys. Thank you for remaining committed and doing that for me. So I really appreciate it, man. And Mamoru Chiba, you're saying, I don't think we'll see 30 FPS on a PlayStation game. I think it's the reason why Sony produces the Pro. Yeah, we did talk about that yesterday. And that's why I'm saying, like, it is possible that Sony is going to do everything in their power to ensure that they don't have to, that they don't have to worry about, will this game run at 30 or 60? Is it not going to hit 60? I do want to say this real quick. This person underneath Danny Carlone's tweet, again, senior environment artist in God of War. This person says, so does it need to be 4K if they are only getting 1440p on the S? He responds by saying, it doesn't need to be 4K, which is expensive. It could be 1080p or 60 or another variable resolution at 60. They want to keep it locked at 34K and push the visuals to a high level on this scale. So here's what I will admit. And this is the part that's genuinely confusing to me. And I'm actually looking at the responses right now. And I'm not trying to be snarky about this, like I'm genuinely just trying to figure this out. If the question right now is, do we believe Bethesda? The question is, do we believe Starfield simply cannot achieve 60 FPS on the Series X? Or do we believe them? Because right now, that is kind of the argument that's happening is there are a lot of people, like I said, they're coming out and they're basically saying, like, the reason why it's fine that it's 30 FPS locked on the Series consoles is because it can't do 60. It's interesting. That's the one thing about this tweet from this developer that I think we need to pay close attention to is keep in mind, Danny Carlone, he is not saying that it's not possible at all. He's just simply saying, if you really read word for word and really process what he's saying here, he's just saying that it is a design choice. And he says at the end, my guess is that they want to go for a seamless look and less pop-in. And he says, and of course, it is your right to dislike the choice. And so I think what the question really has to be right now is I think initially the question is Bethesda lying? No, I don't think Bethesda's lying. Because if you think about it, they're not actually saying we couldn't do 60 FPS. they're pretty much saying the opposite. Like they're saying like we don't want to do 60 FPS. It is a design, like they literally said, it is a design choice, right? John Lindemann from Digital Foundry says the complexity of the systems and being able to do so much makes it impossible. I would trust Digital Foundry. I wouldn't doubt them either. Maybe it is impossible. But let me ask you this, like, wouldn't that be the smarter thing to say? If that's true, if it's impossible for them to hit 60, wouldn't it just sound better on paper and generally speaking in a PR manner to just say we can't do 60 because the game is it's too complex, it's too large. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not Bethesda that's saying that. It's everyone else. It's literally everyone else except for Bethesda saying that. So the way I'm reading this is that Bethesda is just simply saying, like, we don't want to do 60 FPS, and that's fine. Like, I can respect that from a point of view where it's like that's their decision, it's their game, it's their decision. They're going to do what they think is best. But I just think it's weird to me, and the one thing that does kind of stick out to me in this scenario is it's the fact that everyone else is saying it's not possible except for Bethesda. You know? And I don't understand that. Like, is it that, well, Bethesda doesn't need to say it? Why would they need to say it if everybody else is already saying it? That's where I think people are getting really mixed up right now, where if you think about it, you know, this Dreamcast guy tweet, he said the game is unfinished. I'll be honest, I think that's a little, you know, that to me doesn't add up, because it's like, I don't know that a game not having 60 FPS means it's finished or unfinished. And I don't know how you could come to that conclusion if Bethesda literally just told you, like, we decided it was a design decision. Like, we purposely made sure not to have a 60 FPS mode. But it's just kind of funny because I think people are walking away from Danny Carlone's tweet, and even though it's true, like he is defending Starfield and Microsoft, he's essentially just reiterating what they said about the game. And people are kind of picking it up and interpreting it as they want to. You know, people are interpreting it as, oh, okay, so, you know. So something that a lot of people are saying that is interesting to me is they're saying that Starfield is CPU bound. In other words, the game simply isn't actually that scalable. This person says it could be that it is CPU bound, and even reducing the resolution wouldn't allow for 60 FPS. Otherwise, it seems like they would give people the option to play at 1440-60 on the X. If the S GPU can handle 1440p 30, then the X GPU can certainly handle 1440p 60, but their CPU is about the same. So that I've heard multiple people state that. They've basically said that the reason why this game can't scale is because it's a CPU bound game. And if you think about that, boom, that explains it perfectly. Right? Because with the GPU, games that are GPU bound, you can scale them. You're just scaling the resolution at that point. Games that are CPU bound, you know, that's where the frame rate is handled. And that's not going to, you know, you can't. It's the same reason why when I talk about a PS5 Pro, people have said, like, dude, if they don't change the CPU in the PS5 Pro, the chances of seeing a game just shoot from 30 to 60, you know, if it's a CPU bound game, it's not going to happen. Saying it's memory, not CPU. Well, either way, I mean, I you know, it's interesting to kind of look at it from a more technical perspective, and that's why it's interesting to hear a developer come out here. But I will say that, you know, because I'm more focused on PlayStation, I just feel like this whole situation with Starfield, it has opened a new can of worms. It's not technically new, but it feels like it's new because it's the first time we're really talking about something like this generation so far. And in a really meaningful way. And that is like, you know, do you think Sony maybe sees an opportunity here? Potentially. Do you think Sony sees an opportunity where they think to themselves, you know what? If Microsoft is basically coming out here and they have 2 games in a row that are running at 30 frames, do we try our best to hold on to that we still do 60 FPS narrative? Our big AAA games still do 60 FPS. Or do you think Sony sees it the other way? Do you think Sony is kind of looking this as at like they're looking around right now and they're like, so it turns out that if a game looks impressive enough, mostly everybody is seemingly okay with hearing that it's going to be locked at 30. And that's the real question I have with all of this, because clearly we know how Microsoft feels about it. Microsoft doesn't care either way. Like Microsoft is just like, look, our games are at 30 now, and that's that. Not all of their games, of course, but just for 2023. I mean, I guess Forza is going to be 60, but just Microsoft's just okay with saying like some of our games might be 30. Period. End of discussion. Like that. That's just how it is, and we don't care, and that's fine because a lot of people are also saying, yeah, we don't care either. Let me see here. We got Petite Sneaky 5. You're saying, I believe GTA 6 will be 30 FPS on PS5, but if it runs at 60 FPS, I expect every game to run at 60 because GTA 6 is the biggest game to come this generation. Yeah, a lot of people are bringing GTA up, and I think it is interesting to bring that up in this conversation because GTA... You're right, man. You're right. If GTA comes out and they say we have a 60 FPS performance mode, that'll be the biggest slap to the face to a game like Starfield and any other game that is out here saying we have to be at 30. It's gonna destroy that narrative single-handedly. However, a lot of people are anticipating that, dude, GTA 6 is probably gonna be 30. And even I can say that, like, I wouldn't be like flabbergasted, like, oh my God, it's Rockstar. They've been working on this game for a decade. You're saying, okay. So Wrestling Mark in the chat says GTA won't be ambitious like Starfield. It won't be ambitious like Starfield is. Come on, bro. You can't believe what you're saying right now, right? Like, come on. Come on, man. I could understand that maybe that's applicable to like a lot of other studios and a lot of other games, but it's Rockstar and GTA 6, bro. Like, come on, man. Yeah, I'm gonna laugh when in GTA 6 you find out you can get in a spaceship and actually go fly to other planets at 60 frames per second. Wouldn't that be the plot twist of the century? Dude, that would be so funny. GTA 6, I'll be honest with you, I think GTA 6 is going to be a game that stands alone. I do not think there's going to be a single video game on the market that will be able to stand alongside GTA 6. And the reason for that is because I think that's the expectation. I think that's the expectation for GTA 6. In the end, all that matters is that MBG will end up playing Foam Stars. That's rad. Hell yeah, dude. Let's go. Foam Stars. We'll see what happens with GTA 6 and frame rate. Perfect Image is saying, hey, bro, what do you think about PlayStation Extra and Premium games that posted and Sony shows the PC show, Xbox shows, UBS show? What do you think of their shows overall? And sorry, little writing. It's all Perfect Image is fine, man. I didn't mean that. I know I probably came off like rude the other day, and I didn't mean to come off that way. I know you're trying your best, and I'm not trying to be rude. I just feel a little silly sometimes when I'm reading a super chat, and I feel like I'm genuinely struggling to, like, because I want to answer the question, and I just start to feel, a little embarrassed when I don't quite understand Um, so it seems to me. So generally speaking, it seems what you're trying to ask right now is what I thought of all the different shows overall. But you do mention PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium games. So I feel like this question goes uh, one of two ways, and I'll try to answer it both ways. Hopefully, I actually get one of them right. In terms of like each showing, so I feel like with each show, I think Ubisoft show was actually really good. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched like the main announcement. I think Ubisoft actually had a good show, and I think that Star Wars Outlaws game like really did it. Um, I think the great thing about Ubisoft show is they showed gameplay, man. You know, Capcom show was really weak. Although I did see their update on Dragon's Dogma 2. That looked really good. Xbox's show, again, I still think it was a really good show. I think that as more time goes on and the more I like reminisce on what they did show, it just a lot of what Xbox showed for me is just, yeah, it's not for me. Like I'm just not it's not it's not doing it for me. And I want to say this too. Perfect Image, I know this is a little bit away from your question, but check this out. So somebody said in my comment section the other day, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, they were like, I bet if Starfield was a PlayStation exclusive, it would be your cup of tea. And I feel like this is like I don't blame anybody for assuming that. Like, of course, people are going to come to my channel and assume that any game, if it's exclusive, you'll care about it. And so my answer to that is actually really simple. If a game like Starfield were to be exclusive to PlayStation, knowing it's a Bethesda RPG, this is exactly what I would say about it. I would say I've never been into Bethesda RPGs. I've tried playing them before, and I never really enjoyed it. It is a PlayStation 5 exclusive, and I know a lot of people are going to be interested in it. So what I will do is cover the game. Like I'll follow it. I'll give you guys updates. I'll give you guys news. But there's a really good chance that if I go to actually try to play this game, there's a good chance I might not even play it. But if I try to play this game, I might not like it. And I might just, people might find that kind of surprising. But I think a good example of this is, I think a good example of this is, people just assume that, yeah, Forspoken was a AAA PlayStation 5 exclusive. And there were definitely people who thought like, oh, here we go, man. Like, yeah, hype that up. And it's like, I followed the game. I tried to be fair to the game and I gave it a chance with the demo. And after that, I just determined that like, look, man, like even if Forspoken got like 8 out of 10s and was like sitting in the 80s, I still wouldn't have played it. It's just, I wasn't feeling it for whatever reason. And that's where I just think that like, if a game becomes exclusive to PlayStation, it doesn't mean I'm automatically going to enjoy it. Another great example of this is Deathloop. Like, dude, I really was not excited for Deathloop at all. In fact, if you remember, I was getting really annoyed with the marketing of that game. Okay? But when I saw that it's like, dude, this game's getting 10 out of 10s, I was like, what? I was genuinely shocked. I'm like, okay, I gotta go try this game then. I mean, I have a PS5. A lot of people are hyping the game up, and now it's getting 10. So I gave it a try, and I didn't get it, dude. I didn't get it at all. I'm not saying it was a bad game. I'm just saying, like, dude, I put hours in that game. I'm like, I'm not enjoying this game in the way that, like, this is not a 10 out of 10 to me. I am very confused right now. And it's just another good example of like, it's just not all these games that are PlayStation exclusives are going to be my cup of tea. I am a PlayStation channel, and a lot of people do come to my channel expecting me to cover, to a certain extent, these games. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm going to do. And so, yes, if Starwheel, I don't even know what's Starwheel. If Starfield was a PlayStation 5 exclusive, would I be covering it on the channel when we get news? Yeah. And here's the funny thing about it. What have I been saying about Starfield? I've been saying over and over again, the game looks huge. The game's going to do crazy. Like, yeah, it's got layers upon layers. It looks deep. And people are probably going to live in this game. Like, I'm saying very good things about it. You know what I mean? And I would be saying those exact same things about it if it was a PlayStation exclusive. So this is where I don't understand. Like, I get that people want to, kind of bust my balls and stuff like that, but it's like, I don't get it. Like, I said good things numerous times about Starfield because objectively, from what I can tell, it's doing some good things. Saying MBG, I'm just confused though as a gamer. Why wouldn't you try it for $10? Well, I honestly think the biggest reason is because for me, it wouldn't. Well, I think I saw that Xbox controller somewhere. It's because, dude, like the idea of me just paying $10 to play any Xbox game, I got to get shit set up on my PC, man. Like, I've never gamed on my PC. And I'll be honest with you, like, that's not something I'm just going to dive into for a game that I'm not sure that I'm going to enjoy. I can tell you right now, I wouldn't enjoy Starfield. Just flat out. Like, it could be a PlayStation 5 exclusive. There could be hype galore behind it for Sony, and everybody could be losing their minds over it. Dude, I wouldn't enjoy that game. I just wouldn't. I don't enjoy Bethesda RPGs. Never have, never will. And it's like, dude, it's like when people told me, like, dude, you got to play Bloodborne. You know why people told me I had to play Bloodborne? Not because it was exclusive. I mean, that was part of it, but it was because, dude, like, you love the Dark Souls games. Go play Bloodborne. You're gonna love Bloodborne. And I did, and I was like, holy shit, like this, yes, this is it. So, oh no, MBG has Xbox stuff exposed. Gasp. Dude, I have an Xbox One X. I think it's like in my closet somewhere, bro. I wonder if I'm sure it still works. I guess it still works. But yeah, man, it's just interesting. It's interesting that people say certain things and I just don't think they understand that, like, you're not making sense. MBG, what do you think about PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium games that posted? Did they announce the new lineup? Ooh, hold on, I just saw a tweet from hold on, I just saw a tweet from Corey Barlog. Yo, the official McDonald's account put out a tweet celebrating The Last of Us 10 years with a McDonald's like sign, the arch. It looks like it would be on like the, side of the road, and it's all decrepit, and it says look for the light, and they'd say when you're lost in the darkness, look for the arches. Yo, that is wild. What? McDonald's out here celebrating The Last of Us 10-year anniversary? What the hell's going on? Collab incoming? All right, I'm looking at the PlayStation lineup now. The PlayStation lineup for June. Let me actually click on the blog post. So, oh, hold on. Wait, what is going on here? All right, so we have like a little, I guess this is kind of breaking news. I'll read it to you guys. PlayStation Plus game catalog for June, plus PS5 game streaming news update for premium members. A year has flown by so quickly since we rolled out our new PlayStation Plus tiered plans, ushering in new benefits to the service, such as our game catalog and classic catalog, along with the game trials for blockbuster titles. Whether you subscribe to PlayStation Plus Essential, blah, blah, blah. Okay, today we're celebrating this wonderful milestone with 10 days of activities for the PlayStation community. It's also our way of saying thank you to players everywhere for supporting us. First off, we have some very exciting news for PlayStation Plus premium members. We're currently testing cloud streaming for supported PlayStation 5 games. This includes PS5 titles from the PlayStation Plus game catalog and trials, as well as supported digital PS5 titles that players own. When this feature launches, cloud game streaming for supported PS5 titles will be available for use directly on your PS5 console. This means as a premium member, it'll be easier to jump into your favorite games without downloading them first onto your PS5 console. Our goal is to add this as an additional benefit to PlayStation Plus Premium as part of our ongoing efforts to enhance the value. All right, so they say we think it's important for premium members to be able to enjoy as many games as possible via streaming. As more games continue to launch on the PS5 console, we look forward to adding cloud streaming capability for PS5 titles in addition to PS3 and PS4 and classics that are already available. It says we're in the early stages right now. Can't wait to share more details, including the launch time frame. Stay tuned. So, guys, all right. So Sony basically just announced that you can now stream PS5, certain PS5 games. To me, they have to be getting ready for a cloud streaming handheld. They have to, right? Like that's it right there. That's how you make a portable PS5. Not the Q Lite. The Q Lite is that's not a cloud device. That is that has to be tethered to your PS5. The Q Heavy. The Q Heavy, right? Is what it's going to be. That's going to be a dedicated cloud device. That'll be interesting. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that's everything. I don't think that's something that I would ever use. I mean, yeah, because that's what's funny to me is they're like the goal, like right now, PS5 game streaming is so you can get to the game quicker rather than having to download it to your console. And I'm just like, I mean, I guess for some people that would actually be useful if you have horrible internet, but I don't know. You know what I mean? You guys are telling. I'm going to read the rest of these super chats. Give me 1 sec, guys. I see you guys are telling me Naughty Dog tweeted something. I'll check that in just a second. Let me just tell you the actual lineup of the games real quick. So for the PS Plus Extra, Far Cry 6, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge, Rogue Legacy 2, Inscription, Solstice, Tacoma, Deus Ex Mankind Divided, Killing Floor 2, and a game trial for WWE 2K 2023 will also be available on June 20th. And free avatars and wallpaper illustration for PlayStation Plus members. You get okay. Do they not have any? Okay, so there's like no classic games. So there's like no premium titles. Okay. All right, let me go check Naughty Dog's tweet real quick, and then I'm going to read these super chats. The Last of Us fans, we are celebrating the 10th anniversary by honoring the series' impact, our studio, and your love for The Last of Us, and will not be making any game development announcements. Okay. So there we go. That is incredibly underwhelming and not exciting. So they're just going to be doing everything except the one thing that people were hoping for. So, all right. There you go. That's what Naughty Dog said. Well then. Can't say I'm surprised. I don't know. I wasn't actually expecting Naughty Dog to announce anything. All right, let me go over here. Have Sky Toronto. You're saying, funnily, Todd Howard never said anything about scope limiting frame rate like people are saying on Twitter. Todd only talked about Fidelity. That's exactly what I'm saying, man. Like, I just think that I think people are hearing what they want to hear, and they're telling themselves what they want to tell themselves, and that is like, look, here's how I feel about Starfield, and I'm just saying this from a gamer's perspective. I'm not a developer. I know that people are like, oh, I would trust Digital Foundry and trust these other people, and that's fine. I don't blame you. Like, why wouldn't you trust them? But from my perspective, I view it like this. I don't believe that a game like Starfield, like the actual game itself and everything that they showed, I don't believe for a second that it is impossible for it to have a 60 FPS performance mode, even if that meant it had to run at like 900p, right? I don't think it's impossible. I think it's absolutely possible. But I do just also want to add to that it's not that big of a deal to me if they decided that if they ultimately decided that the only way we can get 60 FPS on this game, like the only way to actually make it possible is we have to like completely change the engine. And that would take years. And it's just not going to happen. Then I get that. You know, it's like, okay, like that it sucks, but that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's like you guys spent a decade, or I don't know, people are saying they spent 20 years making this game. I mean, but many, many, many years making this game. And it just turns out that it is, with the engine they're using and the way the engine functions, it is impossible. If we completely overhauled it and created almost like a brand new engine from scratch and just completely tailored that engine to be able to do 60 FPS on a console like the Series X. Because I'll tell you right now, like, I don't think it's what people are saying. You know what I mean? Like, people are saying that it's all the different systems and it's everything that's going on. And I think that when you take the fact that you're right, Todd Howard mentions Fidelity, and then we have this God of War developer mentioning Fidelity. Last I checked, people have told me this entire generation that everything is scalable. That if we're talking about Fidelity, then it's scalable until it's not. And that's where we are. We're at the point where until it's not. Why isn't it scalable? Well, again, it seems to come down to the game engine. And so it's just like, I wouldn't be shocked if on the other side of the coin, we talk about GTA 6, like, it wouldn't really totally shock me if GTA 6 actually did have a 60 FPS performance mode, only because it's like, dude, that game, like, if GTA 6 has a 60 FPS performance mode, there will still be people defending Starfield, saying, well, Starfield's more complex. And that to me is where things become laughable, where it's like, guys, I think it's obvious, like, to me, it's obvious at this point that it comes down to game engines. And I really do wonder if, like, people are saying, I don't think Sony's games are ever going to have this problem this generation. Like, we're not going to have PlayStation 5 exclusives run at 30 because Sony's studios are, like, they've all updated their engines to and their engines are configured in such a way where it's like it should easily facilitate 60 FPS. Like, we can scale the game no matter what. Even if it had to drop down, because I just can't get over what that one person said. We're like, dude, if this game can do 1440p, 30 FPS on the S, you know what I mean? Like, there's no way 1080p 60 isn't possible on the X, considering how much more powerful the X is. Unless it's, again, like an engine issue. Planet Schlorpian, you're saying people are being skeptical of Star Wars Outlaws despite it looking better than Starfield, in my opinion. I'm just very doubtful of Bethesda with how archaic their games have been throughout the years. I think that's the thing about Bethesda is, like, Bethesda to me at this point, they are in that kind of category where it's like we can be like behind in a way in terms of, like, you know, how sophisticated our game engine is, like how, you know, like you said, you're saying it's archaic, like they're going to have bugs and everything else. Something that I think is clear with these Bethesda RPGs is it really is one of these types of situations where this is a game and it's coming from a studio where if, like, they get certain things right in a way that pretty much no other developer does. They do things that no other developer is doing, and that is essentially, to me, what is, in the eyes of a lot of people, making Starfield so great. It's like, wow, this is a, like, once in a generation type of RPG, and we're not going to get something like this from anybody else. You know what I mean? Like we're not going to get this from anybody else. At least not in the same way. And I think that's kind of why Bethesda, in a way, with some of this stuff, they do get it. Like they're gonna get a pass with the amount of bugs that are in this game when it launches. You know, they're gonna get a pass. And the reason for that is because people are gonna determine, you know what, I don't care, I'm having fun. I think Bethesda thought that they would get that pass with a game like Fallout 76. But the reason why I think they didn't get it with Fallout 76 is because that's not what people really wanted from them, you know? Like that's not to a lot of people what Fallout is supposed to be or what it is. It's not a live service game. And so it kind of launched in that really buggy, messy state. And it also launched in a state where like this isn't what people actually want. And I think that when we look at Starfield, it's probably going to be the complete opposite. I think Starfield is exactly what people want and what they've been asking for. And it looks like it's going to be that, but there's no doubt like this game is going to have bugs. It's going to probably come in hotter than most games. And you know, and people are just going to be like, look, it's not ideal, but it's fine because we're having fun. And this is the type of game that we don't really get from many other developers. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's kind of why, you know, here's the thing though, like when you look at Star Wars Outlaws, you're saying people are being skeptical despite it looking better than Starfield, in your opinion. I'm skeptical of Star Wars Outlaws for a myriad of reasons. All right. Number one, it's Ubisoft. We've seen the Ubisoft downgrade right before our eyes many times in the past. When I saw that gameplay of Star Wars Outlaws, I'm like, it's just literally the Ron Burgundy meme. Like, I don't believe you. Like, I just don't. I don't. Like, it looks too good. It could, like, if the game looks that good when it launches, I would be shocked. I would and I mean that genuinely. Like, I'd be like, holy shit, how does this game look this good? It looked really, really good. But on top of that, it has another aspect to it where it's also a Star Wars game. You know what I mean? And I think that this is where, even though people can look at Starfield and they can say, like, there are things in Starfield that don't necessarily look original, and that's true. Like, there are many things in Starfield that look incredibly derivative. I've actually seen people making videos comparing Starfield to No Man's Sky, and I will admit, it is kind of shocking where it's like, okay, yeah, it's not the most original game. However, it also is not a branded game. You know, like Starfield isn't Star Wars. And in a way, that kind of helps the game. You know what I mean? Like it just has the Bethesda branding and the Bethesda stamp. And that in and of itself is something that people, like I said, they look for. And I feel like right now, if you look at something like Star Wars, I say this as somebody who's thought that Star Wars Outlaws gameplay looked incredible. Dude, I'm so fucking tired of Star Wars. I'm just so tired of everything about Star Wars. Like, I'm tired of hearing the music, man. I'm tired of seeing the same creatures. I'm tired of seeing the same planets. I'm just tired of the blasters. I'm tired of it all, man. Like, it all just looks and sounds the same. And it's just too much. It's too much. That's how I feel. That's how I honestly feel about Star Wars, where it's like, dude, don't get me wrong. I don't hate Star Wars. I'm just saying, like, ever since Disney took over, it's full saturation. It's full saturation. And it's like, I told you guys this yesterday where I said, you're right. The game looks incredible, but all I'm sitting there thinking is like, just imagine if this wasn't a Star Wars game. You know what I mean? Like, just imagine if this wasn't a Star Wars game and it was just original. Like, to me, that seems so much more enticing, you know? And I get it. But then again, the game isn't going to sell as well, you know? Like, it's Star Wars. It's going to sell because it's Star Wars. So I will say that the type of game that Star Wars Outlaws is looking to be is very interesting to me, because that doesn't look like any type of Star Wars game I've ever seen before. And that alone is probably going to ensure I buy it because it looks good. But I just can't lie in that, like, at least when I look at Starfield, I can at least say that like even though it looks super derivative, there it has its like own kind of, it has that kind of Bethesda flair to it that you don't really see anywhere else. And in a way that is kind of what makes it original. I think that's what people are looking for. So again, I'm not trying to compare the two like, oh, is Star Wars Outlaws going to be better than Starfield? Um I don't I don't know. I have no idea. All I know is that I I'll be real with you right now. The one thing I will say about that Star Wars Outlaws gameplay is that type of gameplay appeals to me a lot more than the gameplay that I saw in Starfield. Starfield is, obviously it's leaning very heavily into the, RPG aspect, like mining and stuff. And there's just like, as I said, like there's too many systems in Starfield for me. Like it's overwhelming and daunting. And it just honestly, I got straight up like stressed out. Watch it. Like look at all the different things you can do with your ship. And I'm like, that's awesome. I don't want to do any of that. Like Jesus, like there's just too much shit here. And they show how, and I know that this is like one of the big things in Bethesda games. You can pick up every item and you can collect every item. And I'm like, I can't do this. Like that, dude. Starfield makes me freak out a little bit, man. Where I'm like, I just can't do it. It feels like too much, man. It feels like too much. But just I liked the 10-minute gameplay demonstration from Star Wars Outlaws because I will admit the game looks daunting. Like Star Wars Outlaws, people were saying this is like GTA Star Wars. I'm like, it kind of looks like it, especially when they showed like Wanted, like now you're being chased. But I just feel like this is the thing about games getting bigger and bigger and bigger is they start to just feel overwhelming, man. Like even Final Fantasy 16 coming out, like I'm like, dude, I'm so grateful Final Fantasy is coming out in June because goddamn, like look at all these games that are coming out. Like how am I going to play all this? I'm not kidding when I tell you, like if I was looking forward to Starfield, I would feel genuinely concerned. Like, am I going to be able to play anything else over the next fucking year? Because this game is insanity, Saying MBG low key like Starfield. No, I do like Starfield. I do like Starfield and what it's doing. Like it is, I gotta say, it is always interesting, man, to see in this industry when a game like this comes along and it like, obviously I have my problems with Microsoft and Xbox, but just generally speaking, it's just the way people are, hyped for it and talking about it. It's just like, wow, it's fun to watch. It is because it doesn't happen all the time. And that's why I'm like really excited for like I'm not like a massive GTA fanatic, right? Like I'm not obsessed with Grand Theft Auto. I have a long history with it. It's always been one of my favorite games in terms of like franchises. But the reason why I'm most excited to see GTA 6 is because like I'm just very excited to see what this game does to the industry. You know what I'm saying? And I kind of there is kind of this desire where I feel like the last time Sony really did something like that in the video game industry, ironically enough, because it's the 10-year anniversary of The Last of Us, I think the last time Sony really shook the industry, I mean really shook the industry, was, well, I want to say The Last of Us. I feel like you could say God of War 2018. Maybe like I feel like we could go either way, right? Because like a lot of people thought that God of War kind of took a lot of cues, right? It took a lot of inspiration from The Last of Us in a lot of ways. And so I feel like that's why I have to kind of give the credit to The Last of Us because I feel like The Last of Us shook the industry, dude. It did. Like it shook the industry where it's like we've never really seen a game like this in this way. And it's not because of the size of it. It's not because of the scope of it. It's because it threaded a needle that was never threaded before, right? In this industry where it's like this level of quality, this type of gameplay, this type of storytelling, this maturity. You know what I mean? Like the mature themes, and it all just the acting. It all just came together. The music, everything. I mean, a lot of people really look at The Last of Us like it is the perfect AAA video game, right? Um, is it anything like Starfield? Is it anything like GTA? No, it's not. But I don't feel like Sony has put out a game since The Last of Us that has really shook up the industry. And that's not a slight at Sony, not at all, because, dude, Sony instead has just been incredibly consistent. Whereas, like, they may not be putting out, like, industry defining games and, like, shaking up the gaming industry, but instead they're constantly putting out, like, just great, high quality, premium AAA video games. And they're not trying to necessarily reinvent the wheel. And I don't know that I don't know if people want that from Sony, but it's just so interesting because now we're looking at Microsoft. And I know people get mad. We talked about this yesterday. I apologize that I'm regurgitating it once again, but it's just relevant to this overarching conversation that we're having. I know people are like, yo, Xbox and Starfield, but like the people are talking about Starfield like it's going to shake the industry again. Maybe a little bit. Like what Starfield is doing, we haven't really seen before on this scale and this fidelity. And I believe that. I believe we could see that happen. But again, like that's not under. I'm just saying, like, I don't think that's coming directly from Microsoft. And so I'm going somewhere with this. It's not to shit on Xbox. Okay. So before anybody assumes that's what I'm doing. So what I'm saying is I would like to see if Microsoft after Starfield eventually, like, could Microsoft themselves bring out like an industry defining, an industry shaking game like Starfield on their own? You know what I mean? Like without basically acquiring it, but just doing it. Because I don't know. What's the last industry defining game that Microsoft put out? I don't know. Maybe like Gears of War. Possibly, I don't know. Like, maybe you're saying Halo. Yeah, I guess. Is it? Yeah, I mean, I feel like Gears of War kind of. I don't know. Gears of War is kind of a tough one. But this is just interesting to me because we are now reaching that point after we saw Starfield that people are now talking all about like the size, scope, and scale of games, right? Like it's all about the size, scope, and scale of games. And now we're having these conversations about frame rates and like what, like why is this game 30 and could it be 60 and what, is Spider-Man 2 going to be 60? And I just think it creates an interesting conversation. Like the implication here is that if Sony were to put out a game that's super ambitious in scope and scale, that it too would have to be 30 FPS. But I don't know. Is Sony making a game like that? Not a game like Starfield. Don't mix up what I'm saying. I'm not asking is Sony making their own Starfield. No, I'm saying is Sony making a game so large in scale and size? I really genuinely wonder that. I mean, I feel like if you look at Sucker Punch, they're making Ghost of Tsushima 2. How much like what how far can you go with that? You know what I mean? Like how far can a game that's a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima in terms of like scale and scope, how far can that go? A game that comes to mind. The first game that comes to my mind is Sony Santa Monica's new IP. That's the game where I'm like, I'm genuinely going to be interested to see what this game is going to do in terms of scope, and scale, and like how enormous could this game end up being? Because it's a new IP, it's a sci-fi game, and that's all we know. And it's being made by one of Sony's most talented studios. However, the studio is known for linear single-player games. So it's just, it just creates a very interesting conversation. And I'm going to read these other super chats. James, I'm going to read your super chat first here, though, just because it just popped up. You're saying size and scale in a video game doesn't equate to good. That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And I think that it's just quite ironic, isn't it? It's quite ironic that the thing that people are praising Starfield for so much is the exact reason why I want nothing to do with it. And that's bizarre to me. Like, that's genuinely bizarre to me, where it's like, I don't know. It actually makes me wonder, like, do I want games that big? Like, how intimidating is GTA 6 going to be? I don't know. I mean, Elden Ring was pretty massive, right? I think we can agree Elden Ring was super daunting. Elden Ring was very daunting to me anyway. Michael Lynch, you're saying, okay, I'm at the part where you just read my chat. I've never played these games before, so I'm kind of in the same boat. He shows gameplay and describes the gameplay, and it's in depth. I'm a believer. Well, we'll see, man. I mean, you're a believer. I don't think you're the only one. I think a lot of people are now believers, and I just think that naturally, the game isn't out yet, and people are, people are trying to figure out, like, hey, yeah, people are just trying to figure out, like, this isn't necessarily my thing. I don't think it's ever been my thing, but I can try it out right now for free. Let's see what it does. So we'll see, man. I don't think you're the only one that's just suddenly converted into a believer. Vino, you're saying Bethesda allows you to play the way you want. You don't have to use all these options or even fully manually customize. Just follow story quests. Yeah, that seems to be the defining factor of a Bethesda RPG. It is simply freedom. And one thing that I have learned about myself over many years of gaming is that I do not want to play a video game that is just pure freedom. I don't think it's bad. I think some of the greatest games that people have ever enjoyed are games that just give you pure freedom. But I realize for me that I don't do well with those types of games because I end up just feeling like I need some kind of direction. It doesn't have to be linear, but I need some kind of direction. I just need something to kind of funnel me a little bit, because when I'm just left to my own devices, where it's just, and that's why I've talked about it so much. Like, this is what killed me about Elden Ring, and I'm like a really huge Dark Souls fan, and I loved Bloodborne, but Elden Ring felt so stressful to me because I just didn't. The very thing that people loved about it, I almost felt like I like this less than everybody else. Like, I actually like the fact that Dark Souls and Bloodborne were linear, bro. I liked that, And when you're saying you could just follow a guide, that's true. But to me, that, I don't know, that would kind of hinder the experience, right? But like Elden Ring for me, it felt, I was like, this is going to be Dark Souls 4. It's like Dark Souls open world, and that's like basically what it was. But I never really took time to think to myself, like, but do you want that? Like, do you want the Dark Souls formula, but in an open world? And I think what really killed it for me, and when I say killed it, it didn't make it so that I did beat Elden Ring, and I did enjoy it. But the biggest negative to me, and I know that people praise From Software for this, but I can't praise them because it actually hindered my experience, genuinely. And it's not about getting good. It's just when they basically put you in the game and then said, we're not telling you literally fuck all, dude. Like, we're not telling you where to go. We're not telling you what to do. Just go. That frustrated the hell out of me. Because I'm just like, I would just at least like to know, like, what's the next place I'm supposed, like the general area that I'm supposed to go, And they didn't do that. And yeah, you're saying you actually kept getting lost in Elden Ring. Yeah, dude, that killed me, man, because it just, you know why? You know what I think it is? Here's what I think it is. Because I'm really trying to dissect this and figure out, like, Why does that bother me so much? I think it's because I'm the type of person where when I sit down to play video games, I always like to feel a sense of progression. I think to me in video games, that is the single most important thing outside of just enjoyable gameplay. Obviously, the gameplay has to be fun, right? Like a game could have the greatest progression system. If the gameplay is horrible, I don't care. I'm not going to play it. So when I play a game that has great gameplay, very enjoyable gameplay, rewarding gameplay, at that point, the next thing that I need to just really for this game to just feel like, okay, this is exactly what I want, and I'm all in. It has to have a very um a very a very good sense of progression that just it hits all the right boxes in my brain, I guess. And when I play these really open games, especially again like a game like Elden Ring, where I just get lost, right? Like I just get I'm like spending like how long have I spent just roaming around doing literally nothing? You know, maybe I ran into like 3 enemies and I killed them real quick, but I like they're just random enemies that are not relevant to progression to the game. You know what I mean? They're just there. Um and I realized like I just spent 15 minutes trying to get to the next area and I'm still not there and I don't even know where I am or what I'm doing. That makes me genuinely feel like I just wasted my time. And that I know to a lot of people that's like no, but that's part of the experience. Like you're not like you're supposed to feel like you don't really know where you are and you have to figure it out. But to me, it just makes me feel like, dude, like I don't know. I need to feel like I'm progressing. And um I just learned that about myself. Saying it's called exploration. Yeah, I guess I'm like anti-exploration, man. You know? Maybe not anti-exploration, but like I like the idea of exploring. I just feel like I don't know. I struggle with anything that doesn't feel like linear progression. And in open worlds, I appreciate having many different options, but I still feel like for me, when I play an open world game, I need that thing there. Like I appreciate it when developers, it doesn't have to be the Ubisoft effect, but I appreciate it when developers are like, look, we have an open world and you can explore and you can do whatever you want. But if you want to just follow a path, we will show you that path if that's what you want to do. And you can go on that path when you want and you can get off that path when you're done. And, you know, you're saying, so MBG, what do you think of Avowed? They said that it is an open world and open zone. To me, that is interesting. Like I did see that and I'm like, oh, that's actually interesting to me. Like I feel like I'm not saying it just suddenly became a game I'm that much more interested in playing, but I will say, like, as somebody who looked at Avowed and thought that just kind of looks like another Elder Scrolls, I'm good. And they're like, well, actually, it's not open world. It's like a more like it's just this idea of like a more linear Elder Scrolls with maybe more refined combat. You're saying MBG Bethesda RPGs have very clear quest markers and very clear main path. Everything else is optional, but you'll never get lost unless you want to. Would highly recommend trying it if you ever get an Xbox. Interesting. Yeah, it's been many, many years since I've even played a Bethesda RPG, but who knows? Maybe I'll end up. I mean, I've said earlier that I don't think I don't see myself playing Starfield. I don't. Doesn't mean I never will. Just right now, I may not see it. Doesn't mean I never will. Who knows what could happen? You know. Wouldn't that be the funniest thing ever, though? It's like September rolls around. I'm like, all right, guys, I'll give it a shot. Let's give Starfield a shot. It's like I come back, guys. I'm super helplessly addicted to Starfield. What did I do? I think I'm done with PlayStation, bro. It's like I don't even think I'm playing Spider-Man 2 now. I'm gone. I'm living in this world. It's like before you know it, well, MBG just became a Starfield streamer. And that's what he does now. That's his channel. That's funny. SBG, Starfield bound gamer. That's what's gonna happen, bro. That's the real reason MBG doesn't want to play Starfield. He's afraid. One planet at a time, you'll be okay, MBG. Speaking of which, guys, just a reminder on the 16th, so it's like in 2 days. If you're looking to secure like the collector's edition or pre-order, you want to pre-order anything relating to Spider-Man 2, that's actually going live in 2 days. I'm gonna try my best, man. I'm gonna try my best to secure that Spider-Man 2 collector's edition. I never go for collector's editions, but I think that statue with Venom and Miles and Peter fighting looks sick. So I'm gonna have to go for that. Um, Let me see, where am I at here? Panthorium, you're saying the game Quantum Error will be launching on both Series X and PS5, 60 FPS gameplay using Unreal Engine 5's TSR for upsampling at 2K. So engines do play a role. Yeah, Quantum Error, again, I don't know, like, I don't know if that game's even remotely comparable to Starfield. I say that because I literally haven't seen gameplay. I don't know what exactly it is, but I have no doubt about that, dude. Like, I have no doubt that more cutting edge modern engines probably do make it easier to have 60 FPS as a target. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it just makes sense to me, right? Like, the technology is improving. You mentioned Unreal Engine 5. And I wouldn't be surprised as well if these more updated modern engines, I wouldn't be surprised if the way that they're created, it ultimately allows for like more, I don't know, kind of like you can essentially scale in different ways. Like you have a wider range of how you can scale your game and how you want to choose. I could be, again, I'm not a game dev, so I don't know how game engines work. I could be totally wrong about that. But that's just my assumption that as technology continues to improve and game engines become more and more advanced, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that with that just simply comes more options to just configure your game however you want. Like, for example, Sony's going to be they're doing a lot of work on the Decima engine. The Decima engine seems to be the main Sony engine, and I have to imagine that one of the things they're probably trying to work on with that engine is like, obviously pushing like the fidelity and what we can do visually, but also, trying to just ensure that this engine can continually output 60 FPS, on the hardware that we're building it for. That's my guess anyway. You're saying it's hard to say because no one can use Creation Engine 2 until people who make mods get their hands on Starfield. Fast. Oh my god, are you telling me there's going to be a 60 FPS mod? No, I don't think so. I don't think they're going to allow mods on Xbox, but we have Exley 3000. Exley, thank you so much, buddy. Exley 3000 coming in, following Hellbound 1981, gifting another 5 memberships. Guys, that brings us up to 11 memberships on the day. Let's get some W's in the chat for Exley. Maybe get a little membership train going. Really appreciate that. Love to see the continued support. Exley's been a big hitter as well. Exley's been doing a massive amount of uplifting for this community with gifting. Exley, Hellbound, all doing great work. Zombie Dragon, appreciate it, guys. Appreciate that. You're saying they are allowing mods on Xbox for Starfield? Oh, fascinating. Oh man, that's going to be embarrassing though if that happens. Imagine there's a mod, somebody comes out with a 60 FPS mod. I think people would be very happy, but man, that would make Bethesda look bad, wouldn't it? Actually, you know what? It probably wouldn't make Bethesda look bad. It would probably make certain people who said it was impossible look bad. But we'll see, man. We'll see. Yeah, I forgot that Microsoft did allow mods for Skyrim and Fallout 4. That was so random. Perfect Image, you're saying, what is your buying game list? Well, that's a good question. That I try not to think about that in depth too much because then the realization dawns on me that I want to buy a lot of games. And it's tough because I could buy these games. Am I going to have enough time to play them? It's hard to say. But right now, obviously, there's Final Fantasy 16. Actually, you know what? Let me. Hold on. I'm trying to find something here. My video game buying list in 2023. All right. So, what? We're in June now. Let me see. I'm kind of looking over a list right now. So yeah, next up in line is Final Fantasy 16. What comes after Final Fantasy 16? Let me see. There's so many games. Holy shit. Uh, there is. So I don't plan on buying this game, but I don't know how you guys feel. Like that game Exoprimal by Capcom. That's coming out in July. I mean, I feel like that game looks like like it could be a little bit of fun with some friends, but I don't see myself buying that. Oh, you know what? You know what game is on my buying list? Remnant 2. This is a day one buy for me, hopefully. I might still be playing. I probably still will be playing Final Fantasy 16, but Remnant 2, man, this game looks really good. That's a day one buy for me. So I got Final Fantasy 16, Remnant 2. So yeah, Remnant 2 seems like I feel like that game's going a little under the radar. And then after that, there's another game that I think looks pretty interesting. It's called Atlas Fallen. I don't know if you guys have seen that. That looks pretty fun. After that, I forgot about this game. God, this is coming out too. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You guys know me. I play Dead by Daylight still, and it's like a asymmetric horror game basically. The Texas Chainsaw. I don't know, man. I don't see myself buying the Texas Chainsaw Massacre because it's like, why? Why would you? When you have Dead by Daylight, I don't know. I'll have to check out gameplay of it. And then there's Armored Core coming out, and I said, to me that's kind of like I don't know, man. That's up in the air right now. Goodbye Volcano High. Absolute day one buy, bro. Hell yeah. Goodbye Volcano High, August 29th. Let's go. Let's go. What else is there? Lies of P. Oh my God. Lies of P and Mortal Kombat 1 both come out the same day? What? See, this is what I'm talking about, man. Like, why? Why is it got to be that way? Because I could probably buy both of those, but I'm not going to be able to play them at the same time because, like, it's too much. Damn it. Oh, yeah. When's that Warhammer game come out? Did I skip over that? So, in September, Lies of P and Mortal... Oh, my God. And Payday 3. This is stupid. I hate this. Why is the gaming industry like this? It's not just me, right? It's not just me. Like, isn't it so annoying how the holiday is always ridiculously stacked? Because Payday 3 does look pretty good, man. It looks pretty fun. And then apparently that RoboCop game is supposed to come out in September. October, let's see what else there. October. So I know a big one for a lot of people is Assassin's Creed Mirage. I'm not into Assassin's Creed, but Lords of the Fallen, Alan Wake 2, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Oh my God. Alone in the Dark. That's 1 month, dude. Those are 4 games that I'm interested in a single month. You got to be kidding me. That's not even fair, dude. I'm glad I'm not into Assassin's Creed. Could you imagine if I had to add Assassin's Creed to that list? What the hell? What the hell, man? November, let's see. Yo, I see that game the day before. Why, dude, there's like no game set for November. What the hell? That's bizarre. That is strange. The day before, that's not coming out on PlayStation, but a lot of people are thinking that game is going to flop, bro. That comes out November 10th. Hogwarts Legacy for the Nintendo Switch. Persona 5 Tactica Biomutant for the Switch. Like a Dragon, The Man Who Erased His Name. So these are like wow, there's like no games, not no games, but very few games, like new games coming out in November. That is bizarre. Call of Duty's probably going to be there, right? Guaranteed. Call of Duty, some kind of Call of Duty. And then December, the only game that's listed for December right now, literally, the only game with a December release date, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. I'm probably going to pass on that. Not an Avatar fan. But that's okay. So, at least, okay. Based on the list I see now, at least I can take solace in the fact that after October, I'll basically have, unless more games and their dates get announced, I'll basically have 2 solid months to play all these games, which still doesn't feel like enough time. So that's generally what I'm looking for with games I'm going to buy, and I'm sure there will be more added to that list. You're saying you forgot about Stellar Blade and Silent Hill 2. Well, yeah, right now they're not listed there. Like, there's no release dates. Dude, if Silent Hill 2 comes out in September, I'm going to... Oh, and Helldivers 2 is supposed to come out too. What the hell? Holy shit. This is worse than I thought. See, this is why I don't make lists, man. Because it makes me freak out because it's too daunting. It's too much. Yeah, that's true. Some of these games could end up getting delayed into 2024 as well. So, James, again, man, you're saying a medium or semi-large open world like Elden Ring or even Red Dead Redemption is perfect. Anything bigger is bloated. Also, Ghost of Tsushima is a great example. Yeah, I think that's a pretty important aspect of all open world games. It really comes down to not just the size, because you say how like Red Dead Redemption and Elden Ring are like perfect size. It also comes down to density as well, right? Like sometimes I do feel like I am okay with games being, even open world games, like being smaller but being more dense, being more packed. Because I will admit that like in a lot of open world games, there's just a lot of area to just travel, and that can be an important part of the game and a great part of the game. But it has to be balanced correctly, because one thing you never like to see in open world games is bloat, like games that just clearly it's like we just made this big for the sake of it being this big, nothing else. That's not really a good time. At least it rarely is. And Ex Cathedra, you're saying Remnant 1 was my favorite game from 2019 other than Death Stranding. Remnant 2 looks better in every way. Do yourself a favor and play them. Rock on. I did play Remnant 1, and I agree. That game is underrated. Remnant 1 is an underrated game. And that's why I'm really excited for Remnant 2, because it's like, I think it's only $50, by the way, as well. It looks more AAA to me, but it's only a $50 game. It's not like 60 or 70. And it looks like so vastly improved. You're saying Remnant was boring. I mean, I could see why some people think that. It's basically like it's the Dark Souls formula, but with guns. And there's multiplayer co-op. Like you could play the game cooperatively with friends. And I really enjoyed it. It was just a good time. So, MBG, did you play The Surge? I actually never did play The Surge. I heard it was pretty good, but I never got around to it. So yeah, that's basically like the first major topic that I wanted to discuss with you guys. I mean, we talked about a few different topics, but PlayStation essentially they defended Microsoft here in a way that I don't think people were necessarily expecting. And I'm just very curious to see going forward what Sony's approach with frame rates are going to be, because, the only first party game in terms of gameplay that here's a crazy thing to think, actually. Think about this for a moment. We only have gameplay for one first party PlayStation Studios game. One. We have no gameplay for literally any other PlayStation Studio title. It doesn't exist right now. We have not seen it. Isn't that interesting to think? We haven't seen gameplay of any other first-party game. So I'm not saying that there's a highly specific reason for this. Like, I'm not trying to insinuate that this means that they're not showing gameplay because every game they're going to show is going to be 30 FPS. No, but it's just interesting. You know, we're going to be finishing off the year with Spider-Man 2 from Sony, Starfield from Microsoft, and going into 2024, it'll be fascinating to just watch what Sony might do with the frame rate situation. And it will be, I think it'll work in Sony's favor if, like, going forward, if Sony can continually just ensure that, like, every single one of their AAA games can hit 60 FPS on the PS5, that would be a pretty big deal. That's one last question I have for you guys, just to close out this conversation about frame rates and Starfield once again. I have one last question for you guys. And I don't have the answer to it. If I did, I wouldn't be asking. If Starfield wasn't currently being developed for PC, but it was like a game that was just being developed for the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S alone, and maybe much later on a PC version would come, do you think they would be able to achieve 60 FPS? Just wondering what you guys think. Actually, you guys are saying no. Devilac, you're saying yeah, probably. Mostly everybody's saying no. Saying no chance. I was just curious. Because, like, yeah, I was just wondering if, like, if that could be potentially a factor, you know? But most people seem to be convinced it's no. All right, yeah, I was just wondering. Well, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with Sony's games going forward. But there you go. Sony developer comes out and they defend Microsoft's honor. They defend Who would have thought, man? A Sony developer defending Starfield. Crazy times, bro. Could we imagine a Microsoft developer defending Sony? Maybe. They'll join forces. All right, here's the next topic in line. And this one I think is just as interesting. Maybe, I don't know. You guys let me know. So a report has come out, and this has, when I tell you that almost no one has reported on this. Believe me when I tell you, almost no one has reported on this. But I think it's kind of, I'm not saying it's a big deal. Like, I can understand why in the midst of all these different things going on, this went under the radar and just people missed it. But Raf Grassetti, I'm sure you guys saw that, you know, he was the art director at Santa Monica, art director for God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok. He recently just left Santa Monica studio to go to Netflix. They poached him. That's pretty much what happened. Netflix they want talent, and they got it. And he recently did an interview, and he revealed some interesting insight into what Sony truly expects from their first-party studios, their bigger first-party studios. And I don't think that what I'm about to go over and what he said is shocking by any means, but it was said in a way that it definitely got people kind of talking back and forth and a little bit of discourse. I'll tell you what that is in 1 second. I have a super chat. Boss, dude, why are you chewing my wires? I have a super chat from Gonzalo. He's saying, MBG, do you think Starfield will steal the Game of the Year award from Zelda Tears of the Kingdom? If yes, do you think that Xbots are going to go crying in the same way they did when God of War Ragnarok had a chance to win it? Well, I'll tell you right now, for a fact, if Starfield doesn't win Game of the Year, you know you're going to see certain individuals on the internet freaking out and saying that it's not fair and it's rigged and blah, blah, blah. But then again, I don't know. Maybe not. If it loses to something like Zelda, maybe people will be more understanding. But I do think, based off of everything we've seen so far, as long as nothing like catastrophic happens between now and the launch of Starfield, it seems like Starfield will end up being a Game of the Year contender. And Whether or not it could beat out Zelda, well, I don't know about that. I mean, a lot of people seem to be under the impression that Zelda is the clear winner of Game of the Year for 2023. And I kind of expect that too. So saying MBG must not remember Fallout 76. You know what a lot of people were saying? A lot and I'm just bringing this up because I've seen some people saying it. I don't know how true it's going to be, but people were basically saying like, dude, they're in for a rude awakening when they realize that, the fidelity that we're seeing from Starfield in the Starfield Direct, people are going to be in for a rude awakening when they realize that everything we saw was basically this game running on a PC at like the highest settings, and that's not like what it's going to look like on the Xbox Series X. And I don't know if that's true or not. I do not know if that's true or not, but that is something possibly to consider. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Solid Snake, you're saying, hey, bro, I love your PlayStation setup. I appreciate that, dude. Thank you. All right, so Ralph Grassetti, what did he say about Sony's expectations? What does Sony expect from their big studios? Boss, dude, you are such a baby. He just can't. Hold on, guys. Boss has to come up. He needs to. He won't accept anything else. Come on. All right. I'm like over here trying to get into my next topic, and he's just like literally just shoving his head into my chair, being like, must sit on lap. All right. So this is basically what Ralph Grassetti said, okay? He said that Sony demands 90s from their big studios. Now, we're not talking about studios like Housemarque. We're talking about studio or like Media Molecule. We're talking about Naughty Dog, Santa Monica, Guerrilla. They're bigger studios, Insomniac. He said that Sony demands 90s, like as in a 90s score, like 90s Metacritic, 90 or higher. Now, at first, that might sound like, wow, well, that seems kind of unfair. Like that seems pretty aggressive. But he then went on to say that in return, this is Sony's expectation, but in return, Sony will give that studio as much time as they need. If they need more time, they'll give it to them. And they will give those studios pretty much unlimited resources, as many resources as they need. Whatever they need to make that happen, they'll give it to them. And it's interesting because I saw some people, not a lot, but I saw some people when this was being reported on, even though it wasn't being heavily reported on, basically saying like, wow. And I think, all right, I know you're trying to jump. And I think that this is actually really good news. Okay, I think this is actually ideal because think about this. Sony is one of the lead video game publishers in the AAA space, right? They're leading in the AAA space. And what is the expectation from gamers that you go out and you're expected to pay $70 for a AAA video game? $70 is a lot of money. Especially when you consider, like, these days, a lot of people are in, not in the best position financially. There's, a lot of things going on with the economy. It's not great. It's not ideal. So to ask and expect $70, the expectation is the game it can't just be good. It can't just be a good game because when you consider all of the different ways that people can access games now, there's free-to-play games, there's subscription services, there's tons of games on these subscription services. Like, games are actually more accessible than ever before. So the idea of paying $70 for a game, it can't just be good, because you could probably get a good game for much cheaper. I would say most games can't even just be great. It's clear that in the AAA space now, where people are expected to pay full price, games have to be like superb. That is what the expectation is. That may seem unfair, and people might say that's not true, but if you look around, that's exactly the case, man. People, when they see AAA games, they expect nothing less than something superb. And even though it may seem like overly aggressive or even wrong on Sony's part to basically say, we expect you guys to deliver like 90 or higher. And it's worth noting, Raf Grassetti made it clear that developer bonuses are not tied to a game's rating, just to be clear. It's not like the higher games rated, the bigger the bonus. The developers' bonuses are tied to sales of the game. So the better a game sells, the better the bonuses will be for developers. So it may sound aggressive. It may sound like, yeesh, that's a tall order. But I think this is actually ideal. And I think that this is potentially Sony's, I think this is the best mentality for them to have, because think about it. It's like, it's a mutual thing where we're the publisher and we're going to fund the games and we're going to give you all the time and all the money. But in return, you have to deliver, and you have to deliver big. I think that this is a good thing for Sony to have established, and you could argue that this is Sony's expertise kind of showing up here, because what do we talk about time and time again when it comes to Sony's games? We talk about the consistency. We talk about how their bigger studios are just constantly trying to one-up one another, and they're constantly trying to hit that new high, right? That they're just pushing each other. You're saying, isn't that what every company wants in general? Of course it is. Of course, yeah. I mean, of course, any AAA video game publisher wants high-scoring games. They want good games. But it just seems to me that, Sony is a little bit more serious than other, not every publisher, but they are a little bit more serious than other publishers, when it comes to really pushing for this. Here's a good example. Let's talk about Spider-Man 2. What do you think Sony's internal expectations are right now for Spider-Man 2 in terms of not sales? Because Sony knows I don't know why I almost said Star Wars or Starfield. Sony knows that Spider-Man 2 is going to sell really, really well no matter what. Guaranteed. However, Sony cares about that prestige. They do care about the reviews. They care about the review scores. They care about the Metacritic score. Sony's expectation right now for Spider-Man, and Insomniac is well aware of this, you got it. We want a 90. We want a 90. Let me ask you, what do you think the fan base is saying right now? Do you think the fan base, I'll tell you right now, if I were to ask you guys in the chat right now, you're not the entire fan base, of course, but you're just sample size here. If you had to say what your expectations for Spider-Man 2's Metacritic is, what do you expect? What do you expect Spider-Man 2's Metacritic score to be? $87, $92, $89, $87, $85 to $90, $89 to $92, $85, high $80s, $93, $90. Okay. So generally speaking, at minimum, people are expecting mid to high $80s. But there seems to also be a lot of expectation for 90 or higher. Now that's just us. We're not the ones investing hundreds of millions of dollars into this game. So I would say that considering this is the general expectation, I think it's safe to say that, yeah, Sony and Insomniac are striving for a 90 or higher for Spider-Man 2. And I don't feel confident in saying that like it's going to be a guaranteed like 90 or higher, but I would not be shocked if Spider-Man ended up landing at a 90 or a 91. Um, you're saying MBG, most people don't know what Metascore is, bro. That is true, but it does matter. And the reason why it matters, you know what Sony caring about the Metacritic score reveals? It reveals that Sony does care about the conversation. And that's really interesting to think because Sony, a lot of people think that Sony like doesn't pay attention and they don't care at all and they're not, they're not paying attention to anything that people are saying. Not at all. It's like, if anything, this reveals quite the opposite. This reveals that Sony absolutely cares how people are talking about their games, how people are talking about their brand. How do people view their brand? Do people view PlayStation and their games as top tier, cutting edge, award winning, or do they just view them as, they're pretty good, but they could be better? And I think that, Metacritic scores, they are not the be all end all. They're not. But we can't deny people lose their minds. At least the internet does. Like, it just look at Zelda, somebody just mentioned Zelda. Like, dude, look at the way people were talking about Zelda's review scores and where it sits. You're right that most people don't know, but more people are beginning to know. And it's beginning to like matter to a certain degree, if review scores don't matter, if Metacritic scores doesn't matter, if Spider-Man reviewed at a 64, do you think it would sell as well as if it reviewed at a 90? If it reviewed at a 73, would it sell as well if it reviewed at a 90 or a 91? I feel like the answer to that's no. I feel like it's just not. Like I feel like even though most people might not know what a Metacritic score is, when you think about how do you get a high Metacritic score, it's basically 9s and 10s across the board. It's all the video game outlets, all the video game reviewers basically coming out and be like, this game's either a 9 or a 10. 9, 9.5, 10. And then maybe a couple saying like it's 8.5. I feel like that does matter to people, man. Like, even to an average consumer, I think they kind of vaguely pay attention where it's like, is this game good? Like, I think even a lot of average consumers do go to YouTube and they'll just type in like Spider-Man 2 review. So the reason why Sony likely cares about having, and it's not just Sony, but I think Sony really cares about having this high review barometer here where like we want to make sure we're always in the 90s or above with our bigger games. It's because it ultimately just leads to more and more and more positive word of mouth, more and more recognition, and more prestige. And I don't know, maybe you guys disagree with me here, but when I think about the PlayStation brand in 2023, the thing that it has is a lot of prestige. It does. Like, and I know that some people think that that's not true, but if we're talking about the average consumer, I don't know, man. Like, some people have talked about Sony, at least and PlayStation, kind of as like, they're like the Apple of gaming. I don't know if I agree with that entirely, but I think Sony does kind of see themselves that way. Like, they're the Apple of gaming, right? And that's and I think the reason for that is because I do think that on a more, when we're talking about like the average consumer and the people who are maybe paying attention but not paying attention that closely, that's kind of that's a big reason why people are choosing PS5s and buying them. Like, that's a big reason why when people choose to buy PS5, they're it's the only choice for them. And it just continues to be. And so I just think these things work hand in hand, ultimately. Like, I think when Sony puts out high quality AAA, highly rated video games, it just has this kind of ripple effect where, of course, not everybody who buys a PS5 is going to buy Spider-Man 2. But I think that it just creates this kind of, it starts as an echo chamber, but it really starts to bleed out to where, if you think about it, when you talk about the casual consumer, where are they getting their information from? The average consumer, the more casual consumer, gamer that is, they're getting their information probably just from things that they're just randomly passing by. And it could just be somebody scrolling on Twitter and they don't really follow anything gaming related, but suddenly a tweet just appears in their algorithm and it's of, I don't know, like IGN or maybe a popular reviewer basically saying, yeah, Spider-Man 2 is a 10 out of 10. It's one of the best games. Or yeah, it could be they heard it from their friends or their family or whatever. Or, maybe they just see an ad, right? And they see the ad. And of course, like, if they see an ad, it's not going to tell them that, like, hey, Spider-Man 2 is a 10 out of 10. But if the game looks really good, there's a good chance it's going to review really well too. And so I just think that Sony basically wants all of their bases covered. They want to make sure that, they have some of the best studios in the world. They're putting out some of the most highest rated games in the world, that they're getting as many awards as they possibly can, that they're selling as many consoles as they can, that their console is viewed as the more premium one, that their product is viewed as the more premium one, and that they just have this kind of, highbrow type, prestige around them that the competition simply doesn't. And it's just fascinating because I imagine just Jim Ryan sitting there, basically just saying, like, I demand 90s from our studios. And I guess I just wonder from the developers. So that's the thing, is like Ralph Grassetti, he was sure to make it known that, like, this isn't a bad thing for the developers. And I think that's the big question here that people have, is like, well, if Sony's out here like demanding 90s, like, what type of pressure is that putting on the developers? But that's the whole thing, man. Like, that's why when we've talked about PlayStation Studios, there's something that goes along with that, Like, anybody who's working or applying for a job at Insomniac or Naughty Dog or Guerrilla, like, I'm pretty sure that they're going in with the understanding that, like, there's a high expectation here and we have to perform. We have to deliver. It's not like if they don't, like, for example, Guerrilla Games with Horizon Forbidden West, they got like an 88 on Metacritic, either an 87 or an 88. So it didn't hit 90. Do I think Sony was like freaking out and punished, they punished Guerrilla? No, not at all. Do I think Sony was like, damn, we really wanted you to hit that 90? Yeah, of course. But that's pretty damn close. You know what I mean? You're saying crazy how MBG swings this as a positive? It is. It is a positive. It depends on what you want out of gaming. To me, this is a positive because it's Sony basically trying to do exactly what I want them to do, which is I want very high quality games, especially if I'm expected to pay full price for them. And that's what I want. I just want high quality games. That I would really prefer a game be superb. If it can't be superb, then I can settle for a great game. But I'll tell you right now, like, I'm not trying to pay $70 for just good to okay video games. I'm not. That to me is just like, I either expect very good or superb, and I think that's a fair expectation, especially when I'm dealing with a company that's saying we expect $70. To me, it would be nonsense if it's like, this is kind of like, I want to ask you guys, and I just think this is interesting food for thought. I really think it is, because it just, we talk about Sony and Microsoft all the time and how they have different they both have very different approaches to their to their game development and how they're trying to sell people on games. When we think about all the games that were shown off at the Xbox showcase, I'm going to put Starfield aside. Okay. I'm not going to ask the question, does Starfield look like a $70 game? It looks like, yes, it does. I know. Everybody's going to say Starfield looks like a $70 game. So we're going to put Starfield aside for right now. And I want to analyze all the other games. How many of those games looked like they would be worth $70 based off of what we saw? So like Fable, just looking at that trailer, do we think that could be a $70 game? Does it look like it would be worth $70? You guys are saying yes. You think so? Okay. All right. So what about Avowed? Does Avowed look like it could be a $70 game? I'm seeing a lot more no's for Avowed than I saw for Fable. A lot of people saying no for Avowed. Okay, so okay, what about Compulsion's game? Please remind me the name. I don't know why I cannot remember somebody give me the name of that game. Saying impossible to say. South of Midnight. Okay, South of Midnight. I do agree it's very difficult to determine, but just going based off of the initial trailer and your gut instinct, do you believe South of Midnight will be a $70 game? Like it'll be, full price. I'm seeing more no's for that. All right. What was after? So Hellblade. Do we believe Hellblade is going to be a $70 game? Like, does that look like it's going to be worth $70 based off of everything we've seen so far? I'm seeing a lot of yeses. Just a couple no's, but most people are saying yes. See a lot of people mentioning that they still need to see more gameplay first. Okay, so what's the next game? In Exile's game, Clockwork Revolution, I think is what it's called. Clockwork Revolution, which I think got in a little bit of trouble recently. I think Clockwork Revolution got in a little bit of trouble recently for basically copying the BioShock Infinite's trailer. A lot of you guys are saying, well, this one seems to be more mixed. I see people saying no. I see people saying yes. And I'm not going to ask Forza because I'm pretty sure Forza will be, yeah, I think we can all agree that looks like it'll be a $70 or worth $70 if you want to buy it. What else was there? Am I forgetting anything? I think that's it. Now here's the next question I have for you. How many of those games look like they're going to be able to compete with Sony's games that Sony has put out so far? So like we think about Horizon Forbidden West, think about God of War Ragnarok, obviously there's Spider-Man 2 coming up, game like Death Stranding 2. Well, although Death Stranding 2 is like a second party game. Maybe Ghost of Tsushima 2. Like how many of those games that we just listed that we're trying to figure out the price, all of them, that's not true. I can tell you this is where it becomes easy to spot the fanboys. You're going to say all of them? Yeah, I don't think so. Just being honest, I don't think all of them. Saying most of them. Okay. Somebody's saying none of them. I think that's a bit fanboy too. Like none of them. That's too. I don't agree with that. So I was just curious to see what you guys were gonna say. Just trying to feel out my chat here. To me, the games that look like they're going to be able to be on the same level, because you know what I want to say is this. One of the biggest things when we talk about Sony games, and we're having this conversation about Sony cares about 90 plus. One of the things that people have said for a long time, including myself, about Microsoft is like, dude, Microsoft isn't producing, like, they don't produce games that are on the same level as God of War, that are on the same level as Horizon, that are on the same level as Ghost of Tsushima and The Last of Us and, Spider-Man. A lot of people have said that time and time again because it's been true. And my gut reaction when I think about all the games that were shown at the showcase is that I do think some of those games just might, and I have to use the word might because we still need to see more. That's just the reality. Like like I see people saying Fable, and Fable to me is an interesting one because it's like, okay, graphically, yeah, that game is going to compete with Sony's graphically. Everything else, I have no fucking idea. And I'm kind of perplexed that people are just kind of walking away being like, oh yeah, dude, that game's going to compete with Horizon or something like that. Like, and I'm not trying to be snarky about that. Like, I'm genuinely kind of confused. Like, what gives you that? Where is that coming from? You know what I mean? Like, graphically, hell yeah, dude. But anything, like, how do you know? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, this is why it's like, I gave Microsoft their flowers, but but here's why I'm asking this question. Because I know people are thinking that this is going to turn into like I'm not trying to turn it into like a console war thing. I'm actually trying to get to the bottom of what we have in front of us are two different companies that are going in two very different directions. One is sticking to $70 premium full price. And I've always said this. The day that Microsoft can consistently put out games on Game Pass, exclusive games on Game Pass, that are as big and as good as the games that Sony is selling for $70, that's the day that Sony might find themselves in a little bit of trouble. Just a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying that means Sony's going to panic and say we can't sell these games at full price anymore or people will stop buying them. And it's just weird because it's like, dude, when I look at these games, I think that there are... So first off, Starfield, I think, is that game. First and foremost. Like, I think Starfield is... And I think Microsoft knew that. Microsoft knows that Starfield is that game that will be full price $70, and everybody will look at it and say, that's definitely worth $70. And then there's going to be a big celebration that, shit, this is going right into Game Pass. It was like it's worth 70. We're getting it for 10. So that right there, yes. All the other games, I do believe are questionable. And I don't mean that as in like they look bad. I'm not saying that. Like they look good. I'm saying that we do not know. We still don't know. We're going to find out very soon. And honestly, we're going to find out in the next 18 months. And I'm very interested. Forza, Starfield. 2 games, full price games, being dropped into Game Pass, where you can get 2 $70 games for basically $20 if you're subscribed for both each month. The other games, though, are the ones that I'm curious about because I get this feeling, and this is not a slight at Microsoft. It's really, really not. It's I need to stress that because I know people are going to think that that's what it is. It's not. But I get this feeling that most, like 75 to 80% of Microsoft's games from their studios are going to exist in this in between where it's not double A, but it's not like full blown triple A. It's going to be right in that middle. And I think that's the sweet spot that Microsoft probably should be aiming for, where it's in between double A and triple A. And it's not quite either. And I think that that's what's going to make it so that Microsoft wins in their own way. Like, think about it. Because my question is, if Microsoft doesn't have to make their games as big as Sony's, or like as triple A-ified as Sony's, because, you know, it's like, well, we're not trying to sell these games for $70. We're just asking for 10. Then why would they? And yeah, and when I look at Avowed, when I look at Compulsion's game, and I'll be honest, when I look at Fable, we'll see. Fable, that could go either way. Fable could be 50-50. I need to see. I need to see more Fable. When I look at even that Clockwork Revolution game, right? When I look at these games, like, I just don't know that they're gonna be games that, because, like, think about this. If I were to ask you right now to compare those games to Starfield, because we're all in agreement that Starfield is absolutely a $70 game. Well, how do they stack up now? You know what I mean? Saying Fable is an expensive game. Yeah, dude, relax. I don't know why people are getting all upset over Fable. I'm saying it's 50-50. I'm saying, like, Fable could be on the exact same scale as, like, what we've seen from Sony. And that would be quite shocking. Frankly, I'd be like, damn, that's impressive. I mean, I Playground Games, they're very talented. I could see it happening. You mentioned Hellblade. So Hellblade is weird to me because I'll be honest with you, I'm really beginning to reevaluate my expectations of Hellblade, because Hellblade, this entire time I've been thinking that Hellblade is actually that single player game that when it comes out, it's going to be like a Sony single player game. Like 20, 25 hours. Could be shorter, 15 hours. And it's just this epic, full scale thing. And there's just like all this crazy shit. And frankly, I've lost a little bit of faith in Ninja Theory. I have. And not to say that it would be a bad game, nothing like that. The reason why I've lost faith in Ninja Theory is because they seemingly like refuse to show this game, like what it actually is. And it's actually gotten me to a point of frustration where it's like, guys, you announced this game in 2019, and I've only seen one gameplay segment for 5 minutes of Senua throwing spears while on rails. It's like, I think I'm at a point where I'm now going to downshift my expectations, because it's just like, I'm beginning to think that the game is going to be actually much smaller and much more confined in a way than what I'm expecting. And that doesn't mean it'll be bad, but I'm just saying, like, what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't be shocked if Hellblade basically is like a $30 game. Like, you know what I mean? I wouldn't be shocked if it's actually very, very, very similar to Hellblade 1, where it's a much shorter, tighter, and that can be, those can all be good things, but, essentially the scope of the game stays the same as the first one. And that to me would be, surprising, because I guess my expectations were, I really thought that they were going like, It's kind of like the same thing with State of Decay, right? Like I remember with State of Decay, the first game was so good, but the thing that actually got me so excited about it is how much bigger they could go with the next game. And then they just like didn't. They're like, we're just not going bigger. We're just keeping it the same. And it's just going to be more refined. And I'm like, oh, okay, then. Well, that's fine. It's not what I expected, but it's fine. And I'm thinking about State of Decay 3, and I'm like, 3 is going to have to be the one where they go much bigger, right? They're just saying, MBG, you're not making sense. MBG is trolling. Okay, that's fine. Maybe I'm wrong. Hey, I'm not, keep in mind, this is all speculation. I'm not saying that it's guaranteed. Like, the truth is, anybody sitting here telling me that Hellblade 2 is going to be as big and great as like God of War or The Last of Us, how do you know? That's the only, like, that's what I'm asking is, how do you know that? What is telling you that? That's all I'm trying to say. I don't know why people like. I'm not saying it'll mean it's a bad game. No, like Hellblade. It's clear Hellblade will be a good game. How do I know? I don't know that it won't. But I'm saying if it is, like they're not showing me anything to let me know that it is. So MBG trying to start console wars here. It's not. Look, it's not so much about it's not console wars. It's not at all. The reason being is because this doesn't have anything to do with consoles. This has to do with, if anything, it's like business model wars. You know what I mean? This is business model wars. The console doesn't matter to Microsoft anymore, at least in that way. It's not their priority. With Sony, it is. But, Microsoft said it themselves. Like, they're not going to win first place in the console space. That's over. This is the platform wars. And I've always had this. And maybe this just comes from a place of maybe just fear mongering, but I've always had this kind of thought in my mind where it's like, what's the most damage Microsoft could ever do to Sony and Sony's full price premium $70 business model? And to me, it's obvious. And I feel like this should be obvious to other people as well. Games that look as big, and if Microsoft makes games that are on the same level as the games that Sony makes from top to bottom, they will do the most amount of damage that they've ever done to Sony. And they will hurt Sony's business model. Because if you think about it, that's what Sony has. That's all they, like, that is the number one, like, that's the clincher for Sony. It's the fact that Sony's been able to come out and say, like, look at the games we make. Look at how big it is. Look at that graphical fidelity. Look at this open world. Look at the beauty. Look at all the things you can do, right? Look at Guerrilla. Look at what they made. Look at The Last of Us. Look at The Last of Us Part 2. Look at God of War Ragnarok. Now look at our competition. And that has worked for Sony, man. It has worked for them for a long time where, yes, people would look at the competition and they would see that there ain't nothing over there that even comes remotely close to it. But now keep in mind, like, I know people think I'm being cynical. I'm not. The reason why I asked my chat, I was genuinely curious, like, what you guys thought of these Microsoft games. Like, do you think, like, these are going to, let me put it to you this way. Here's another way to put it. I think this is a good question. There's even an easier way to simplify everything I'm trying to say. If Game Pass didn't exist, how many of those games would you be willing to pay $70 for right now based off of what you've seen? Like, it is as simple as that question. And I know there are going to be some people that say all of them. Well, okay, if you're willing to pay $70 for literally all of those games, then you have to be a very big Xbox fan. But I'm saying if Game Pass weren't a thing, how many of those games would you be willing to pay $70 for? Saying most of them? See, that's what's crazy to me. Somebody says none. You're saying all but compulsions. Starfield, Fable, Hellblade. I think that sounds reasonable. Those three. Some of them. That's what see, this is why I'm very interested to see how this unfolds, because dude, if like as Microsoft begins to market these games more and more, and let's just say this, right? Like Starfield comes out sitting at over 90 on Metacritic potentially. Forza comes out sitting at over 90 on Metacritic potentially. Let's just say Hellblade actually comes out early next year sitting at over 90 on Metacritic, and it's like a 10-hour experience, something like that. Avowed comes out. Let's say it's sitting at in the high 80s, and it's like a 25-hour experience, or maybe like a 15 to 20-hour experience. This type of if Microsoft starts doing this consistently, dude, Sony only has one choice, and that's why I'm interested. The only Sony technically has two choices, I think. Like Sony could just come out, and now that I'm thinking about it, this actually sounds like the most Sony thing ever. Josh, I'm sorry, man. I just noticed I missed your super chat. I'll get to that in a second. Sony could come out and just say, we don't care. Go ahead, Microsoft. Make your games, get high scores, and put them in the Game Pass. We don't care. We're still selling our games, and people are going to still buy our games. That could be what Sony does. And the more I think about it, I'm thinking that's actually what they're going to do. However, there is always the chance that, the narrative might really start to shift. And that narrative could really start to put a lot of pressure on Sony, where if Microsoft starts delivering these games consistently, and they're like, people are like, damn, these games actually seem like they would be worth or close to being worth $70, even if they're worth like 50 or 60, and they're just dropping them in the Game Pass quarter after quarter after quarter. Sony's games are going to have to be bigger and better than ever to justify, only one or two coming out a year and then being full price. And, you have no choice but to pay 70. And that's going to be interesting to witness, because that, even more so than Microsoft getting Activision Blizzard, like I think that is how Microsoft, even though they are walking their own path and they're not directly competing with Sony, if they do that, Sony's going to feel the effect. And the idea, of Sony not demanding, but expecting 90s from their studios. Like, guys, we expect you to really make a game that's like sitting at 90 or higher on Metacritic here. That's going to become even more imperative than it already is. And so it'll be fun to watch, In other words, I guess it's just another aspect to this conversation, talking about PlayStation show, Xbox's show, their different business models, Game Pass, Sony paying or expecting full price for all their games. It just creates a really interesting conversation here, and like the different ways that these things could play out. And of course, we don't know yet. I know people getting, like, again, I see a lot of people getting defensive about what I'm saying about Fable and what I'm saying about Hellblade, but can you blame me? One of the most shocking things to me is how like people are like, yes, Fable's guaranteed to be great, and so is Hellblade. Like, dude, people told me the same thing about Redfall. People told me the same thing about Halo. People told me the same thing about these games, and it's just, I guess I'm sorry for being so skeptical, and maybe it comes off as cynical at this point, but it's just like, I'm not entirely sold. And I'm not saying that I need to be, because that's kind of irrelevant at this point. But it's just the thing that is relevant to me. The thing that is relevant to me is, how is what Microsoft is doing right now, how is that going to potentially impact PlayStation and the decisions that PlayStation may or may not make? That is incredibly relevant to me. And knowing that Sony cares so much about review scores and about having games in the 90s, it's like, dude, if Hellblade comes out like a 93 on Metacritic, Starfield like a 91, Forza 90, right? It's like, and then eventually when Fable comes out, Fable comes out 95 or some crazy shit like that. Dude, Sony's gonna be like, oh, okay, what's going on? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And even I think everybody would be like, yo, what's going on right now? But I guess I'm not that just like to me that sounds I don't know. That just sounds like kind of it just sounds not so plausible to me, I guess. Yet anyway. So, I don't know. I'll ask this last question too before I just finish up here and close out my stream with these last two super chats. The last question I want to ask is I asked you guys, what do you expect the Metacritic score to be for Spider-Man 2? I want to now ask, what do you expect the Metacritic score to be for Starfield? Just out of curiosity. Because I think everybody basically settled on for Spider-Man 2 anywhere between an 85 and like a 92, give or take. 98? Okay. I think that's a little unreasonable. If I were reviewing the Final Fantasy 16 demo, what score would I give it? Dude, probably a 9 out of 10. Just based off of that first 3 hours. Straight up. It was really good, dude. It was really, really good. And I'm not just saying that. It was actually, the quality is there. Big time. I'm seeing a lot of people saying, I don't know, I see a lot of high 80s, low 90s. Okay, so that's interesting. That's fascinating to me. That's why I wanted to ask that, because it seems like, generally speaking, the expectation is that both Starfield and Spider-Man 2 are expected to kind of land in a similar place on Metacritic, which is very interesting. Very interesting. All right, well, with that being said, I have two super chats here. Josh, you're saying, when are you going to show PSVR 2 some love? I see lots of love for it in your chat every stream. Synapse and Firewall deserve to be on the upcoming list. You are right about that. Yeah, that is unfair of me. They are premium video games. Synapse and Firewall Ultra. Those are two 2023 titles for Sony. Just, a lot less people are going to be able to experience them, but they're there, man, for PSVR 2. So that's that's my bad. That's my bad for just kind of like brushing over them, because we talk about these, the different lineups that these platform holders have, and yeah, those are we have to count them because they are games that are coming to PlayStation exclusively through VR2. And even though, again, a lot less people will experience them, they're apparently Synapse is very good. I don't think that game actually came out yet, but the previews are saying it's very, very good, and Firewall looks like it's going to be very high quality too. So, absolutely, Josh. And Vino, you're saying Xbox should set their own standard, not PlayStation's AAA one. I agree with that. I think that's actually very well said. I 100% agree with that. And if you think about it, that would be the best thing for Microsoft to do, and that might be exactly what they're doing. I think the big problem I have personally, and I don't think it's not like a big problem. Maybe some people think it is, but it's a problem on my channel where I continue to speak about Sony and Microsoft as if they are really walking a path that is close. Like, they're both walking separate paths, but that these two paths are close to one another. And in reality, I think that it's just becoming more and more clear that these two companies, at the end of the day, might really not care too much, not nearly as much as I want to think they do, about what the other's doing. Like, I think that I speak under this mindset that, oh yeah, Sony is paying close attention to what Microsoft's doing. They absolutely care. And I also talk about, like, oh, Microsoft is a lot of these things that Microsoft is doing, they're doing in response to Sony. But in reality, it's like, as time goes on and as especially as Microsoft continues to do what they're doing. Like, I, it's like in April, right? When we talked about that Phil Spencer interview that I couldn't comprehend because I'm like, how is this man out here saying this? And it's like people have said, like, not many people, well, some people have said to me, like, dude, go back and re-listen to that interview with Phil Spencer, specifically those parts where he talked about being in third place, not competing in the console space, and then imagine that Microsoft no longer sees Sony as competition, but they're just out here basically alone, doing their own thing. Then how crazy does it sound? And then I realized that, well, I guess, yeah, it if I were to just view it that way, that there is no more competition. Like, the game is over. The game ended. There's no more boxing match, right? There is no more whose whose score is higher. Then suddenly, yeah, what they're saying makes a lot more sense. But the problem, and I'm not saying this is a big problem, but it does feel like it could be a problem. The only problem I have with that, and the thing that, like, I kind of struggle to grapple with is, like, so hold on, wait. So am I supposed to envision an industry where Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, none of them are competing with one another? They're all three of them are basically marching to the beat of their own drum. And I'm not saying that that's even a bad thing. It's just that is difficult for me to imagine, because it's like, how does that work? Like, how do all three companies and platform holders, if they're going to all march their own beat, like, I don't know. I guess that's unheard of to me. And it's kind of difficult to imagine that, because in order to properly imagine that, it means that I have to assume that, at least with Sony and Microsoft, that they're not out to get each other, that they're not fighting for the same person and the same person's money and the same person's time and attention. You see why I'm saying, like, it's difficult for me to just speak about Sony without ever bringing up Microsoft, because it is difficult for me to believe that they're not ultimately fighting for the same thing at the end of the day. But maybe they aren't. Maybe they truly aren't. And maybe that's what's going to be revealed over time. And then, there's always the idea of, like, well, can't both do well? Of course both can do well. And yeah, Game Pass really is the separating factor for PlayStation. It really is that, because you're saying they work together behind y'all's back. They probably do to some extent. Maybe not, though. I don't know. When we look at the whole ABK deal, I feel like that maybe paints a different picture. But it's interesting. It's interesting to me, and we'll see, man. We'll see how all of this continues to unfold. And I think at this point I'm eager to see what Sony does next. I don't know if Sony's ever, I don't know when the next time they're going to do anything, but right now, man, like, Xbox is at an all-time high. To me, it seems clear that they're at an all-time high, and they earned that with, they had a good show, they won people over, they did what they needed to do, like I said. And Sony, I don't know, man, like, Sony's like, PS5 cloud streaming. It's like, oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, it is kind of cool that they finally did that, but I'm busting their balls a little bit here. But I'm just interested. I'm interested to see, like, okay, what is the path forward for Sony now to be like, we don't care what Microsoft's doing. We are staying the path, and we're going to sell Spider-Man 2 at $70. It's going to do perfectly great, and we got plans for next year, and we're going to rinse and repeat, and hope you all enjoy. And that's that. And that could absolutely be it, man. So, yeah. So that pretty much ends this conversation. Got a little bit, as always with these live streams, it always seems to me within the last 45 minutes to an hour, I definitely go in a very MBG-ish direction, with some of the conversation, where it just starts to kind of go into not weird territory, but I wouldn't even say incoherent territory. I would just say almost damn near irrelevant territory. I think that's maybe what I would say. So that's where I'm going to end it two main topics today. Talked a little bit about Final Fantasy 16's demo, talked a little bit, just a little bit about The Last of Us and, 10-year anniversary. So Naughty Dog is busy celebrating that. But that's going to do it for this stream, guys. I do have a video going out at 4 o'clock. I've been trying or 4 o'clock Eastern time. I've been trying my absolute best to keep video content flowing on top of the streams. This is something that a lot of you guys have been asking me to do. There have been, periods of time where I've just been focused on the streams, not much video content. And so this is my way of trying to answer those people and ensure that people who want that video content, you will get it. So please look forward to that. Thank you guys for supporting the videos. And thank you guys so much for your continued support on the streams here. I am hoping to do a stream on tomorrow and hopefully Friday as well, and then probably take the weekend off there. So, yeah, hopefully I can make that happen. A huge shout out to everybody who has gifted memberships. Weren't able to achieve our goal today, but still, we hit 11 new members, and to me, that's a pretty solid number and some pretty solid support there. So thank you guys so much for continuing to gift memberships, for becoming members and growing that. And to everybody who donated a super chat, thank you guys so much as well for that continued support. So really appreciate that. The only thing and the last thing I'm going to ask you guys to do just before you head out, please hit that like button for me. It does help with YouTube's algorithm and helps kind of spread these streams out. So hopefully we can get new people on board on the channel here. That does it. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their day. I'm going to go do what I got to do, get some stuff done. And I hope everything works out for everybody, right? It's weird. It was raining real bad earlier. And now suddenly it's just like really sunny out, really nice out. So maybe I'll go outside today, get some fresh air. So, all right, guys, that does it. I'll catch you on the next one. Until then, take care, everyone.